Let's see here. What is going on, All Terrain Nation? Whether it be two-wheel drive, four-wheel drive, you know the drill. It does not matter what you drive. This is your All Terrain Nation. I'm your host, David Boyd, and we are talking Broncos tonight, and we got a special guest involved, and I'm going to bring him in just a second. You've probably seen just a blip of him, but we've got Mr. Tommy with TFL on. But first off, I want to say thank you all for coming in. The Broncos are huge for us, and we appreciate everybody that joins in on this. If you guys would smash the like button, you guys know what it does. It just helps people find the channel, and I greatly appreciate that. And if you want to sub, go for it. But let's see. We've got Mr. Tommy on here, and Tommy, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Dave. You sound, well, your voice is a lot better than this and mine is. I'll put it in those words.
Well, as always, I've got to edit something. Like my stream is always crazy, so there we go. Now Tommy is at proper size. So, but guys, obviously Tommy's on here. They just picked up a Bronco, and since this was an exclusive Bronco night, I thought who better to ask those 0 to 60 questions than the man himself? And first off, I have to say this. I said it earlier. I'm totally jealous of your channel. I think my 3,500 subs are going to take you guys over. I'm just going to let you know that right now. So be scared, okay? I just tell your dad that it's over. It's TFL's over. No, I'm playing. But welcome to the show, man.
Thank you, sir. I really appreciate this opportunity to sit here and talk with your audience. And Dave, I don't know if I make it clear, but I really enjoy the stuff that you do, and I try to join every week when you do these discussions. And it's really cool to see how interactive your community is. You've got a really engaged community, which is great to see.
Well, and they'll appreciate hearing that, because sometimes, you can leave comments on YouTube channels such as y'all's, and sometimes you're like, did anybody ever notice? But when you get to connect with your audience like this, because you guys just wrapped up a live stream, y'all were talking about, your Defender and your Wrangler and all the problems that you've had in the video. But I want to start off with I watched the video where you went to recover that this week, and I like, we were talking, you were like, hey, you keep it real. You like that. I love the fact that you could see that you were not having a good time there bringing that thing down the trail. And I would like to know, how edited was that? Because there had to be a bunch of just swear words in there, right?
Yes, I will say it was not family rated on the first take. So it took several rounds of editing before the team was like, all right, I think that this is probably family safe. But yeah, it's a hard thing to kind of modulate on camera when you're dealing with kind of that raw emotion. And that was one of those videos, and I honestly, I could have done a much better job with it, where like you kind of forget about the cameras and you're just like, I need to get out of this bad situation, and then apologize to my dad and Andre as to why the video could have been better. That was what that situation was.
Well, and many people like that was no joke. It wasn't like you were out there just just for video. I mean, you could see that you were uncomfortable in the video, and I've been in those situations where you're like, man, for one, I don't want to, it's a new car, I don't want to go tear it up. But at the same point, it's stressful. Sometimes I've done recoveries like that off-road, and it's not, especially just changing a tire on a trail is a nightmare at times. So my hat's off to you, sir.
I appreciate that. And it's a really fun job, and I'm very, very fortunate and blessed that I can call this a job, because like, what is that even a job, playing with $60,000, $70,000 vehicles in the dirt? But yeah, that was difficulty. That was a difficult day, and there were some Toyota guys that unfortunately didn't get off the trail as lucky as we did. So I'm actually fortunate that it was just a tire and not a bedside like this gentleman in this fully built out Tacoma. So
well, I wanted to ask you quickly about that while you're on that. Those guys looked like they were so overweighted to be on that trail. Like, those are capable vehicles, but you add all those tents and everything, and you're just, it's top heavy, and then you guys in stock vehicles went up that like it was nothing, and then these big kitted out vehicles have a hard time.
And that's, I think, one of the often overlooked things that you just pointed out about this hobby, is that it's tempting to go down the road of, well, I need that bumper, and then of course you got the bumper, so you need the winch, or vice versa. And then you're like, well, I got the winch, might as well put some lights on it. And then before you know it, you put a lift, and you need a high lift jack, and then you need the shovels, and then you need the rooftop tents. And then, I mean, it gets to the point where the vehicles are so overwrought with gear that they can potentially be worse performers than if they were stock. And it's like, you know, if you're familiar with the road world, lightweight is king. It's like the Lotus strategy: simplify and add lightness. And I think that gets forgotten in the off-road community a lot, that weight is still the #1 enemy of actually getting to your destination.
Yeah, and I was watching that a little bit, and I was like, man, I would like to just watch those guys struggle up that hill, because I've been with you here. We in East Tennessee, well, I'm not in East Tennessee, but where I do a lot of off-roading is in East Tennessee. Very similar terrain to what you guys deal with. A lot of woods, a lot of slick. You know, people think, oh, slick rock of Moab. So you get into clay and dirt is not slick. Like what you're dealing with is truly slick. And yeah, like you were saying, part of the fun of the hobby, especially overlanding, is kitting these things out. I mean, we're guys. We have to modify vehicles for one. So most of these Bronco owners are never keeping them stock. They're going to modify them. And I've seen some of the stuff you do, and like your Jeep Gladiator and stuff. Like it's not stock anymore. And why would it be? You go have fun with that. But I am concerned with the community of, like, sometimes they just overdo it for the sake of, it's kind of bragging rights. Like, oh, I've got the latest and greatest, and look, it's all in my truck.
Dave, I think at one time I was listening to your podcast, and you said you had a YJ. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And what was that like off-road? Was that
pretty
horrible?
Decent? No, that was horrible. Because I went from having a 2000 Nissan Xterra. You know, it had torsion bars, a little more modern suspension under it, but. So I went from that to thinking, oh, the Jeep's going to be so much better. And I had front and rear leaf springs, and it bounced all over the place. The front end was never going to get traction if you had to get into it. And it was carbureted. So, which is, on trails at an angle, carburation is horrible. So it's all momentum.
You had an early YJ then?
It was an 89.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah, and so I didn't stick long with that. I was like, you know what? I want more of the modern technology. And speaking of modern technology, man, you guys just picked up a new Bronco, and not just any Bronco. You got a first edition Bronco, and probably Ford's most exciting color. It's not a color for me, but it's one of their more exciting. It was the launch color, and it kind of started it for them, man. So tell us kind of a little bit, how did that happen?
So, and I want to just preface too, like, if anyone has questions, if you have questions, we're fully transparent about the whole situation. So what happened is about 6 months ago, we got an email from a gentleman who had a Bronco reservation and wasn't going to take delivery of the vehicle. And he approached us and said, look, I've got this Bronco reservation, and I'm a little bit concerned that if I give this up, the dealer is going to slap a $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 markup on that. And he had a problem with that ethically. And he had just started watching our videos, so we kind of had an idea of what we did. And he said, I want to work with you guys on this, but let's see if we can benefit a good cause. So he was a employee high up at McDonald's, the burger place, and said that why don't we come up with a way to support the Ronald McDonald Fund, which is a charity that basically assists families whose kids and children are in the hospital, and they put them up in a place and it's a great organization. So we said, yeah, I think we can do that. So we talked about it, and we were very transparent with the dealer and said, look, this is what we're doing. Just want to give you a heads up. And they're like, that's cool. Do what you want to do. And we were kind of in the same boat. So we, as a company, we buy several different vehicles every year to test in the long term. And we'll talk about that, and like why you can't break a press vehicle, but you can blow 2 tires on the Defender and have that be okay. So we decided that Bronco was the hottest vehicle of the year. We didn't initially have an order. He had a day one super early order reservation, converted it to an order as soon as he could. And then it was a weird thing because he got an email last week saying it'd be ready August 10th. And then the dealer was totally blindsided and said, I don't know what happened, but there's a yellow Bronco here for you guys. Come pick it up. So it's a first edition, Badlands, obviously with the 35s, and then it was $63,200 sticker. Yeah. We paid about $400 off because there was some title and licensing taxes that the dealer just basically said we'll take the blame on that for, and then we walked out the door for $69 and some change. So it's It's an expensive vehicle, dude.
Well, your taxes in Colorado are a nightmare.
They're, they're not comfy. I'll put it that way. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Yeah, I think in Tennessee, I think for my Gladiator, I paid around $3,500 in taxes out the door with it.
Thanks.
So, and then
And then
we don't have the
yeah,
inspections you guys have to go through. So,
we got to do emissions, which is a whole other story.
right.
So the plan with this vehicle is we're going to keep it for a number of months and do as much as we can with it. And then hopefully we're going to sell it and then somehow benefit the charity. And we're still working out ways that we can make donations to those guys and make it fair. But like as a policy, we're not in the car buying and selling business, so we'll never sell a vehicle for a profit.
Right.
Even though we've probably had a lot of missed opportunities to do that over the years, but it's just not what we do. It's not really fair. So we'll hopefully, be able to donate directly to them. And it's been cool because we've had a lot of our viewers actually come to us and say, I had this charity helped me out a lot, and we made this donation because of you guys. So that always feels good. So
Well,
it was a win-win, I think.
And I will say that's cool. So I had a daughter that passed away due to child cancers. She had leukemia and stuff. And Ronald McDonald House did kind of help with that. So I have to say, like, I'm very impressed that you guys kept mentioning that stuff. And so when I watched that video, I was like, that's awesome. And you guys, not that you needed to, but you earned a lot of respect in my book for that. Like, you were very like upfront about it, and just like, hey, and you guys mentioned, because his deal was mention the charity a few times, and you guys, and then I think you did it in the video where y'all were going up the hill as well. So thank you guys for for doing that, because a lot of times there's so many charities out there now. Sometimes good ones get left behind, and the Ronald McDonald House is they just do what they do. They don't ask, they don't bug people. They don't have telephones and just bug people about it. And people, they give.
Appreciate that, Dave, and I'm sorry to hear about your loss. It's
okay.
But I hope that I hope that like we can do at least a little part in helping some folks out. So
of course.
Well, that was the goal with that.
So your dad was giddy as a schoolgirl when you guys were doing the little walk around at the dealership. Like I've watched your dad, especially Nathan, probably since the channel. I was definitely in the 100,000 range of subs, but
Sir, much appreciated.
Yeah.
I'm in the 3,000 range of subs with you, so if that means anything, when you blow up, I'll be right there.
Okay. So you'll have credit with the show then. But I've seen your dad be excited, and I mean I've watched you guys, like the early videos that y'all had the little Volkswagens and stuff. You could tell you were on some back road. Like I've been watching for a while, and to see your dad like really excited by this vehicle, and it's not, you guys get a lot of vehicles, and I've got to test a fair share of vehicles, but you guys get into a lot of vehicles, anything hot, like the TRX, all that stuff. It sort of, the more you get into these, the sort of the fun of it, the excitement sort of loses a little bit, because you're like, okay, I'm in this week. But to see your dad and you guys like show the Bronco a lot of love, and not that it needs it, because I hate to say it, it's the hottest / worst launch of the year, and it doesn't need a lot of love, but to see people so excited by it, and I'll get private messages of like, hey man, my order just converted. I'm like, people are so excited about it. And unfortunately with COVID, it's made part of the problem with Ford. You can't say that it hasn't been a part of their problem, but it's also helped Ford, and it's built a lot of excitement that may have already been gone with the vehicle had there been no issues, and people just were constantly getting their vehicles. And I think it's making a community kind of out of, they did Bronco Nation, which I'm iffy with. They don't like to claim they're part of Ford, but whatever on that. But it's kind of made a community, I think, grow bigger and stronger faster than probably they were expecting.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I just, I'm like you. I follow the forums pretty closely. I like to see what folks are going along with. And I wish that they were able to get more of them out of the door to customers, in a more timely manner. Because I'm very fortunate that we had ours, but I think it's such a tiny percentage of reservation holders who realistically have their vehicles. So if you are in that boat, I wish you the best of luck. And I'm sorry that the situation has happened to you, because You know, Dave, it's a confusing thing to me because I'm pretty plugged into like the classic car world,
Mhm.
and I was talking to a gentleman who had a 1964 and a half Mustang, and I said, "So what's the story of this? When was this vehicle purchased?" And he said, "Oh, this vehicle was bought off the lot 1 week after the world global launch of the Mustang,"
Oh,
and
wow.
that just like, blew my mind. There was a time when in '65 they built 681,000 Mustangs,
Yeah. Yeah.
and we're talking full speed production shortly after the vehicle launched. And I really wish, and maybe we can't because of the internet, but I wish that the manufacturers would go back to that, where they would, boom, here's a vehicle. Next week you can actually go out and realistically buy one. I think that's a better way to treat customers.
Well, and some of obviously in '65 cars were a little more simple. It was,
Oh, yeah,
a wiring harness wasn't what it is today.
absolutely.
And
Yeah, for sure.
you didn't have the internet where there's brands like ours who are, we unfortunately make money. Well, I guess fortunately it helps fund things, but you make money like you guys. You're always we want to be first. So there's this kind of leads into something I told you offline I wanted to ask you was everybody wants to be first, and sometimes that kind of can bite you in the butt. And I explained how offline how it bit me in the butt with Nissan. Well, you guys sort of, and not like you guys went in and was capturing these photos, like Ford just led you through the plant and you guys were spies in there, but you guys got a couple photos a little bit before Ford wanted them out. And like, to be first, sometimes you have to pay the price. And of course, you're following that night of the launch video. It was crazy how I'm sure you guys noticed in the chats that it was
Yeah.
like free TFL, and you guys like, we all take licks from these manufacturers, and you just have to move on. But to be first, sometimes in a world of the internet, it kind of can hurt, right?
The first thing, and I appreciate this opportunity, Dave, to kind of like tell our side of the story, because I think we probably haven't done a very good job of that, and I'd like to clear up that water a little bit. The free TFL thing in the Ford chat, that was not us.
Right,
Like,
right.
all of us were out of the office, all of us were at home, and then I was just editing this video, and I got a text from my colleagues like, "What the hell is going on in the Ford chat?" And then I just pulled it up, and I was amazed by that. So the situation was that several days before Ford officially revealed the Bronco, we got an email from a source that had pictures of the locker switch and the sway bar disconnect
Hmm.
and the 7-speed, I want to say,
Yep.
if I remember correctly. And uh, I want to make it very clear that like we were not under an embargo. So an embargo, and we do this with other manufacturers, is sometimes a company will provide you information before it's been released to give you a background knowledge on what's going on, and then you agree to say, "I will not publish this into the set date." There was no embargo
Hmm.
for us, at least. We didn't have any background information. We didn't promise anything to anyone.
Right.
And I also want to make it clear, we are a news outlet, and if there is news to be had that will impact people's decisions on purchasing vehicles,
Right.
I do feel like it is our responsibility to go with the news. And it's not for Ford. Like, it's not like we had a thing against Ford at that time. We would have done the same with all the manufacturers, and we do. And it gets us in hot water, absolutely. And then, of course, we published the images, and then we lost all of our Ford access, and it was a pretty big deal.
Yeah, because you had
Certainly.
F-150 coming there, right? And it
Oh
was,
yeah,
yeah.
we had. Dave, there was a lot of vehicles coming our way, and a lot of those got either canceled or turned around back to Michigan. So from a profitability standpoint, people say we just did it for the clicks. Oh, we would have made so much more money if we had just stuck to the rules and been invited to those trips and gotten those vehicles. But we made a promise that we would state the news. We worked hard to make sure that those pictures were not on Ford property by Ford employees. That was a
Right.
pretty big deal.
Right.
Because sometimes people send us pictures that are like in the plant,
Yeah.
and we're like,
Yeah.
look, we can't do this. So we went through those steps, and then of course everybody ran with them for the most part. Other outlets and
Well, that's what's great in this world of the internet is you can go, hey, you'll get an email going, hey, could you pull these, please? And you're like, okay.
Right.
But guess what? It's the internet, and it's been captured a million times.
Right.
And because I have a working relationship with you, I will do that. But
Yeah.
once it's out there, it's out there. And to be honest, You weren't the first ones to get pictures out there anyways. There were so many pictures coming from within the MAP plant before that, like of the outside of it. You got to see the 2-door and a 4-door before you were supposed to see them. So, it wasn't like you really broke anything. It was cool to see the inside of it, but let's be honest. The coolest part of a vehicle is the outside. It brings like the excitement, and you guys were just showing some of the cool details of that.
Also think that particular video that got us in all the hot water was an overwhelmingly excited video about this.
Right.
And and there's an argument to be made, and I understand the argument that it's Ford's day and we did spoil the party, but I mean we're a news organization and we cover the news.
Right.
And like you said, Dave, it's typically the first person to publish the images is the one that always gets in trouble.
Yes.
But the next 40. Like, oh, that's fine.
Oh yeah,
which is interesting.
Well,
and
I don't want to wear you out on that either, because I know you guys you have a good or you seem to have a good working relationship with Ford now again.
It's a Dave, and you'll figure this out too, and I'm sure you have. It's a tough media world right now, especially in automotive journalism. When we started this 10 years ago, it was very much like cut and dry. Like, here's a car, go do whatever you want with it.
Yeah.
Nowadays, with the world of influencers, which is basically the world of paid advertising.
Yes.
A lot of our competitors, a lot of your competitors are being paid directly by the OEMs, whether they admit it or not on camera. And it's sometimes thousands, it's sometimes tens of thousands. And for certain sources, it can even be in the M's.
Yes.
So it's tough when you have that rule where you're like, I'm not going to accept any payment from any OEM.
Right.
And we've had the opportunity to, but I don't think that's really fair to the other OEMs. How do I review a Wrangler if you get paid by Ford, right?
Yeah, how can you give an honest review of it? And at the same point, your audience is going to pick up on that real quick. Doug DeMuro is real big about this. He's like, he will not take flights. He will not take any. I'll put myself up. I'll do all this stuff. And like with that and with you guys, it shows that you guys have a large enough audience that you could sell that audience out real quick, and you'd make a big chunk of money. And then what? What do you have a year later? You've sold your soul for what? And I will say, like you brought up influencers. Influencers drive me nuts, because I know with one particular brand that I have a real close relationship with, they think right now influencers is where it's at. And I watched them wipe their social media of anybody they were following. They had a new company come in to do their social media. They wiped it out, and you started seeing all these influencers that you're like, there's nothing about them screams cars or trucks. They're popular in a sport, or they're popular in this, and so Nissan. So I watch with Nissan. I've done a few of their events, and they'll bring in some influencers, and for the most part, all the influencers have been super nice. But the last one I went to in 2020 with the Titan launch, I think Andre. I don't know if you were at the Utah resort. I think Andre
was there.
Yeah. So I covered that, and they had some. I was with some influencers, and I was like, the guy literally and he had 1 million followers on Instagram or something. He goes, I have no idea why I'm here. He goes, I'm not buying one of their trucks. And I tried to explain it to him, because I think he was new to what they were trying to present with him. I was like, look, man, they're going to give you a vehicle to use for 6 months or whatever. Like, this is what they want. And he was like, I have no interest in this brand. Like,
right.
But all the manufacturers, like you're saying, that's what they're looking for now. And YouTube, I think for long form content, YouTube's where it's at. I think the TikTok and all that stuff, look at Instagram. Instagram used to be really popular. It's kind of going away. I love Instagram because I like to dump a picture and move about my business. But, Snapchat was huge. So, and as you guys, I'm sure you have to follow the trends a little bit, right? You guys try to jump on one of the new apps, and now TikTok. And it's like, I can't keep up with the social media apps, let alone I want to do a good job at what I'm doing. And now versus you guys, I have a pretty limited scope of what I do. I cover the few brands that I know really well, and I'm growing. But for you guys who have to cover everything, and then you've got to follow 17 of that brand's different social medias, has to be a nightmare, right?
It's a never-ending moving target, and I mean, you just got to pick the fights you want to. Like, we just started a TikTok account, and that worked really well for us. But then, like, we never really got on the Instagram bandwagon, which was definitely a mistake. Like, I think you've got a much better connection with Instagram, and then Yeah, it's a tough thing, and the other thing too is that we're very fortunate. I mean, we made a policy early on that like we would basically take the revenue that we were making from the videos and dump it back into the company. So that's why we hired multiple people, and then we buy these project cars. And I'm very fortunate to have this job, but I'll put it this way: that my mom would much prefer my dad to pay himself a lot more than be driving Broncos, because he pays himself for the amount of work he does, really a small amount. And the issue, Dave, and I'm sure you're figuring this too, is like the money really from YouTube at revenue is not like the big YouTubers will make it seem. I mean,
Yeah.
if we make 0.002 pennies on a 0.002 pennies on a video, that's pretty good. So like a video that gets 50 to 100,000 views might make a couple $100, which sounds good until you realize, oh, but we got to pay the videographer, and we got to pay the editor, and then we have to pay to any damage that happens to the vehicle. Like, for example, that video I did with the Wrangler versus Bronco versus Defender, like those two tires were $652 later. Right. And I would say like the vast majority of our videos probably lose money, but you have to do that kind of thing in order to do the fun shoots like those big ones and then end up with Broncos. But
Right. And you guys have some of the, like, ideally Denver is like, for one, it's the hub for media cars for your area. So you guys get first selection probably of a lot of the media cars. But two, you live in like off-roaders Mecca. You're only 5 hours from Moab. But Denver offers so many cool trails out there, and I've only got to do just a handful of stuff out there. Usually I fly into Denver to go to Moab because I see I see all this green all the time here in Tennessee. I want to go see some weird red rocks, So but you guys live in for car and trucks, man. You guys live in the best place ever to do this. Uh-oh, I lost Tommy. I lost your audio. Oh, there you go. There you go. Okay.
Sorry about that. I'm very fortunate in that you're right. It is an amazing place to go off road, and that definitely has been that's been a big deal to our success. Relative to the press fleets, though, like LA, Detroit they'll get the vehicles first. So we're lucky that we have a big enough audience where we probably get the vehicles when they come to Denver. Relative to like if you lived in Detroit or Los Angeles, you would have really interesting vehicles quite frequently. But yeah, it's cool. And Tennessee's got some. Honestly, Dave, I have done very little in Tennessee. Some stuff with Nissan, but it's an amazing state, and there's a lot of cool stuff out there.
Well, and guys, we are getting to Bronco, trust me. But the first time you came across my board was you were in Tennessee for a Nissan Sentra release, and I was like, I think that's the first time I noticed you on the channel. I was like, who? Because I was
this nerd. Can you minimize the screen faster, YouTube? God.
No, because I was like, who? Because I was used to like Nathan's what really got me into the channel. I'm friends with Nathan on Facebook. Awesome. I love to watch what he does and stuff. But Nathan, for whatever reason, everybody connects to a personality, and Nathan was that one that I connected to. And obviously, he's been not a fanboy of Nissan, but he definitely. You guys were talking tonight how the Pathfinder that he had that he loved that kind of got hurt, and so I was like, who's the young? Because that was like 4 years ago, maybe. It's been a minute, and you were a little younger, and obviously Nissan. I know where they took you guys, and I was like, wow, like you literally got the car, and it was like, oh, I got to drive around the block and do something with this car, but ever since then, I was like. I don't know about this Tommy guy, but like, you connect.
I don't know about him still.
I don't know about me either. So
no, I know about you. I honestly, I can't go back and watch my videos. They're just.
Yes.
I can't do it. I don't think I'm very good at it, but I am appreciative that I have the opportunity to. And I shot our first video, and I've been editing since I was like 12. So
nice.
Definitely don't watch those videos. Do you remember VHIX? They were like a car review site. Anyways, I did a lot of their videos when I was like 12.
Nice. Well, at least you earned. A lot of people don't know. Like your dad, obviously, is. I don't know the structure of the company, but we'll say he's sort of in charge of whatever happens.
Yeah, for sure.
And a lot of times, like I have a son. If he ever wanted to get into cars, I would definitely bring it. He would have an easier access. But I feel like knowing that you were editing these videos and stuff early on, like you really seemed to earn your way into there, right?
I hope so. I mean, I've spent a lot of my a lot of my middle school and high school years editing instead of hanging out with friends. So I hope I've earned it in.
No,
And I've got a
it sounds like you
long way to
have.
go. Yeah,
No, it
it's
really does.
yeah, it was definitely my childhood, and I love it. Yeah, it's great.
So seeing your dad and stuff, that had to get the passion for, obviously you're editing videos, but like once you can get legally behind the wheel of some of these vehicles, because manufacturers, there's an age that you have to be. It's not like they just go, oh, he's 18, let's throw a car at him. But you seem to, where you really, I see you taking off with the channel, was like the off-road stuff. Like you seem to have a true passion for that. And between you and Andre, you guys seem to, that's where you guys seem to gravitate towards just a little bit. Do vehicles, so with all the cool new off-road vehicles, obviously, you know, you guys were talking about the Wrangler, the EV Wrangler, which I'm a little iffy on that. I think it's a gimmick, honestly.
Okay.
That's what I think eventually, yes, it will be something. But right now, for what you guys saw that you did off-road, like it needed gas to kind of go. But all the plethora of off-road vehicles right now, we're kind of starting to live in a golden age again, I think, of off-road vehicles. And with Ford bringing the Bronco out, you know, Wrangler had it to themselves for a long time. And somebody in your chat tonight commented and said, well, what about 4Runner? Well, guys, 4Runner is so, like, it's so old, it's not even funny. And I think 4Runner, if it wasn't for Tacoma, would have been forgotten about a long time ago. I just think it's kind of brought the 4Runner guy around, and it's the only game, or was sort of the only game, with Nissan got away with the Xterra and stuff like that. But like true off-roaders, these guys are really investing in these type of vehicles, and they're not great for miles per gallon, like in a company-wide miles per gallon. They are not great, but I'm happy to see like Land Rover and all these guys do something.
Yeah, it's honestly, I was just talking to my dad about this. I think that the stupidest thing Nissan could have done was killed that Xterra when they did. I mean, they kept the Frontier going, which was great, but the Xterra was such a capable vehicle. And if they had held on like another year and a half, and they got into this off-road wave,
yeah,
they would have been so successful with it.
Well,
especially
Xterra had the problem of crash testing. That was that
yes.
stadium roof just did it.
Not great.
Yeah.
But I mean, I still think, and I will own one of these one day, and they will get expensive. I'm going to go on the record and say that now is a final year Pro 4X in that bright blue with those lights on the top with the covers that you had to pull off. Oh, that thing is going to be, I mean, look at FJ Cruisers. FJ Cruisers now.
Yes.
2014's the Trails team is going for, in low mileage, $50,000, $60,000.
Yeah, more than it was new. Well, and I know when the Xterra was dying, I want to say I put in one of y'all's chats, but when Xterra's dying, like Boulder Nissan out there where you're at, they were buying up any Pro 4X they could find, because where you guys live, you actually literally need four-wheel drive vehicles. And I think the market sort of forgets that, or these manufacturers sort of forget that, because they chase trends. And, you know, they thought, oh, like with Nissan, they thought, oh, okay, the Rogue, we'll do an all-wheel drive Rogue, and that's going to make everybody happy. And it's like, no, people need, like Broncos. They need true off-road vehicles, right?
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, I get the comments a lot like, well, you've owned so many Wranglers, so you have to be a Wrangler fanboy. And the fact of the matter is, I would have owned so many Broncos, too, if it hadn't been gone for 26 years.
Yeah.
You know, like, when you look at these OEMs, they look for, like, white space in the market within white space within the market. BMW now has 14 different versions of a crossover coupe of the same vehicle, but for some reason, Wrangler didn't have a real competitor in the States for 26 years?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
How does that happen? You know what I mean?
That's crazy. And nobody in the early 90s, everybody was trying to take on Wrangler. You know, Isuzu had the Amigos. Everybody had some small something to take them on, and then for whatever reason, it wasn't profitable anymore, or they just didn't want to.
I think it was the wrong time. I mean, like, you know, you look at what was popular in the 90s, and it was Explorers and Expeditions, and it was giant SUVs. I mean, that was one of the reasons that the Bronco went away in 95, 96 is because Explorer was selling so well. And they're like, well, people are buying these four-door SUVs that maybe don't have quite the same presence, but are better for the family, better in the wallet. And that was great in 1996, but it isn't so great in 2015 or 2016, right, when it really started to explode. So,
well, and cars were popular then. You know,
very true.
And trucks were very utilitarian. They were just basic. Like I remember seeing the 454 SS Chevy, thinking, oh my God, this thing, you know, what the horsepower is horrible. Today's standards, it's nothing. But,
it's nothing.
But then I remember looking inside of it, going, oh, it doesn't, the outside doesn't, the inside doesn't match the outside. But now these manufacturers are so smart, and I give Ford a lot of credit. They've, I think they have too many models of Bronco, but they've tried to make each model unique to itself. The cloth seats on the base are, I'm not a fan of that because it looks just like what you'd see in a basic F-150. But I get it. Cars are like, people don't understand. I say this a lot. To develop one car is over $1 billion now. People think, oh, they just stamp out new things, and it's $1 billion. That's why Nissan took a lot of crap with the Pathfinder. Oh, we're making a unibody, and you're like, yeah, but that name alone's worth $1 billion in advertising. So they got to get money back. And for Ford to, you know, they did the Explorer. What was the Explorer truck, the little unibody thing they did?
Oh, the Sport Track.
Yeah, the Sport Track. They've taken a little bit of chances, but they've not taken a chance like the Bronco in a long time.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, Dave, that you bring up, because it is ridiculously expensive building a new platform. You know, new engines are just so expensive. It's much more affordable, though, to take an existing architecture and then plop a different top on it. I mean, Toyota did it with the FJ Cruiser back in 07, right? It was basically a 4Runner with a different top. And I really do think that they probably should have seen the popularity in off-roaders coming a little bit further down the road and started adapting mid-sized pickup trucks into more extreme, you know, off-road ready vehicles. It's interesting. Right. And the other interesting thing too is like even Jeep was wrong about it when they launched the Wrangler JK in 07 in the unlimited trim. They thought that the four-door might sell 15%.
Yeah.
Right. The off-road community didn't want to touch it. Yeah. I mean, you saw aftermarket companies saying, "No way, we are not building lift kits for that. We are not building soft top for that." And then, you know, a year later, it's what, 70-80% of their market share. It's pretty crazy.
Well, where do you stand on that when you compare? You guys obviously right now you have a four-door Bronco and a four-door Wrangler there. But I know you just bought the two-door Willys package, and I was kind of poking the bear on your chat a little bit about that, because I do think for Jeep, I think the Willys package is one of the better bargains for that. Jeeps are expensive no matter what, so you do get a little bit of options with it. Now you went super base with yours, but I think that between those two brands, like there's opportunities for the four-door, but I don't see opportunities necessarily for the two-door. I don't know how the two-doors stay around.
Well, that's an amazing point, Dave. And I honestly don't know either, to be totally frank with you. I got the inside story on how the four-door started, which was interesting. It was like during the Daimler era, and Mercedes saw the potential in the G-Wagon, and they said, let's try to translate that a little bit to the Wrangler with the four-door, and then that just blew up. I don't know what the breakdown is now, but I know several years ago with the JK, it was like 75-80% four-door to two-door. And maybe it's a heritage thing. Yeah. Maybe it's a cafe thing. You know, fuel economy is a little bit better typically on the two-door configuration.
Right.
But yeah, so for me, like, I am all about compactness and small vehicles with short dimensions.
Well, you have a Mini, so clearly, yes.
That's another story. I don't know if we want to talk about that. I'm just going to get all my credibility shots down there. But yeah, so all about tiny dimensions. So that made sense for me. And I don't have a family. Yeah. You know, I don't carry stuff. And I'll tell you, like, flat out of the bat, if you want to carry more than a toaster oven, the two-door Wrangler is not for you, right? Like, the trunk is basically an aesthetic piece of the vehicle.
Well, try having a YJ. Because the YJ was even smaller. Okay, so I went to the grocery store one time, not even thinking about, you know, I'm used to bigger SUVs. And I was like, oh, crap. Because I had my son with me and my wife with me. And I was like, where do I put stuff now?
I think the backseat on a YJ, if I remember right, is against the tailgate.
Almost.
I mean, the only reason I had a trunk on my YJ is so that when I locked myself out, I could just go through the back. Like, that was the only use for it. Now, I will say Ford has done a really good job with the two-door Bronco and actually the back seat room, and specifically behind the rear seat room. It's pretty usable, but I'm still going to say just get the four-door model.
Yeah.
Unless
Well,
you're like me and you don't have friends or hobbies or activities, and
yeah.
all you want to do is go over rocks, get the 4-door.
Well, so my initial order was for the 2-door. I was going to do a 2-door Badlands. And because my son's out of the house now, I have a young daughter, but I'm not getting in the back of the thing. So it's like, hey, that's kind of your problem. Like, dad wanted a cool truck. Now you've got to deal with it.
Yeah.
But a buddy of mine was like, hey, man, look, there's resale value involved. And obviously, I'm not buying this thing to flip, but at some point, I will move on to something else. So, yes, there is the point of like you were saying, there's a small market for 2-doors versus the 4-doors. And what is it, like over 80% now for Jeep Wrangler versus 2-doors, something like that, right?
Yeah, I don't know what the number is, but that sounds pretty spot on. Yeah. For a while there, you'll get a kick out of this, Dave. For a while there, Jeep's biggest competition in the market was a power boat. They ran through all this market studies, and they after talking to their customers, they realized that people weren't cross-shopping against 4Runners. They weren't cross-shopping against like fun cars like Miatas, which they tried. People were cross-shopping a Wrangler with a speedboat. That was their number one competitor. I kid you not.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
Well, you're going back to kind of heritage. Obviously Jeep 2-doors. There's definitely a lot of heritage there. There's people my age plus that's all we had, so that's what we know. And us old guys are scared of change. Let me tell you, Tommy. The older you get, you're gonna be like, no. Back in my day, you're gonna make
I'm
a
like
back.
that now.
Well,
Dave,
yeah, I heard.
My vehicle does not have power locks or power windows, and I think that's a selling point.
Okay, you're a Renaissance man. You're a throwback. But definitely, Ford looked at that and was like, well, we have to do a 2-door. And the way they did the dimensions of that, they took the older Gen 1 and was like, hey, scan it in. Because that's a sign of we don't know what to do. Let's just scan this old car in and just hope for the best. But definitely, I think them doing the manual transmission in that was definitely for the throwback crowd. Now
they're not going to sell any of them. I thought that was a really interesting choice.
No, and then for them to quickly, I think they paid attention to forums a little too much because they quickly seen all these guys go, oh, I got to have the Sasquatch package with that. And they're like, okay, like by October, they're like, oh, we're doing that. And I don't know that they at the time probably knew, like, can we do that?
It's funny. Like, there's kind of a joke in this automotive journalism world where if journalists decided what cars average people would buy, everyone would be in a Cadillac CTS-V wagon with the manual transmission. And they sold exactly 500 of them. I kid you not, the sales numbers were 500 of the CTS-V wagons in total, let alone the manuals. I see that on the forums, and I'm like, there's such a vocal community that wants a Sasquatch with a manual, but it's got to be such a tiny, tiny actual percentage of what they're going to sell.
I would be curious what the conversion rate actually was for that.
I'm very curious too. And it's an interesting thing you brought up about modeling the Wrangler, because if we go like really in the weeds for a sec, there's very clear signs that Ford took the Wrangler lineup and said, we're going to do that, and then we're going to try to make it a little better. So like if you look at the trims, right? A base model Ford is a Sport Wrangler. It's got steel wheels. It's got no options. The Sport S is a Big Bend Wrangler, right? It's a base model with alloy wheels, just like a Sport S is a Sport with alloy wheels. And then you've got the Sahara, which is in Outer Banks. And then you've got the Rubicon, which is the Badlands. And then they went a step further with Wild Track, which was a little bit of an interesting choice. To be honest, Dave, I want to get your opinion on that because I do not really understand the purpose of the Wild Track trim. Like, why would you get that over Badlands?
Well, I've said for a long time, you've probably heard me say this, that I think Ford came out of the gate with too many, just too many choices. I know in the review night or the reveal night when you could put your deposit down, you didn't get anything from that video that made you go, oh man, this is the one I want. There was no kind of, you were just blindly reserving. But then when the options by October, you kind of got a rough idea. And then what was it? December, I think the build and price sort of came out where you go, oh, this is what it's going to cost me. People started looking at the base and going, okay, I'll just do a base with a Sasquatch. That boggles my mind why Ford allowed a base to get the. I understand the marketing point of the Sasquatch going, any brand can, unlike the Rubicon, you can get front lockers all the way around if you want. But the problem is there's no incentive for me to want to really jump up because modern technology, the screens in these things, I've said it many times. A radio is a radio is a radio to me. Now I know in your Jeep you've got that tiny ass little thing that why they still do that. I no clue. FCA was the worst with little radios.
This radio is the single best infotainment in the industry. It does 3 things. It does presets, AM, FM. Oh, it does 4 things, and Bluetooth. And that is literally all I need.
Did you not need the 8-track option because you're that old guy now?
Yeah, I could use that. And I am upset I couldn't get the PTO and the crank start option. But apart from that, like that little radio just is I would put that in a Rolls Royce if I could, because, and Dave, I'm sure you experienced this too, and the Ford is better. The Ford does a pretty good job of dealing with the tech that is included. But so many I can't tell you how many times I've struggled to program a radio station into a preset. Yeah. Like if I was designing cars, there would be 3 buttons on the dash, one for my single preset, one for on, and one for off. Like that's all I think most people use their car for most of the time. So I like that little radio. But objectively, the 8-inch screen is a much better standard option.
Right. But you look with Ford, like you can get the base has a couple. You don't get the dual climate zone. Oh my God, you got doors come off of the vehicle, and I can't get the dual climate. That's gonna break my heart. But like I understand everybody needs a base. Jeep does well with the Sport. I understand the taking on the Sahara package with the Outer Banks. And I understand taking on Rubicon with Badlands, but after that, like you were saying, Wild Track is a head scratcher. But the only thing I can think of is with Wild Track was they were thinking, okay, we can sort of grab our Raptor crowd.
Okay, that's interesting.
Maybe that we're going to convert them, but then what do? 4 months later, they start showing the Bronco R or whatever. Like Ford has a problem where I think they let marketing lead engineering sometimes.
Yeah, honestly, Dave, I think, and Jeep had the same exact problem, and it made people furious when they launched your Gladiator. It seems like such a straightforward concept to build the first edition first before you do anything else. And people were just, I think, at least our community was dumbfounded when they would go on the forums and they'd see like a Big Bend at a dealer, or like a Wild Track at a dealer. And then what you end up with is a bunch of really loyal customers who were there super early on, placing deposits for the first edition, not the third edition, the first edition.
Yeah.
And then they're still like, well, my neighbor got priority and he's got a base Sasquatch.
Well, and for Ford to come out and say a few weeks ago in that email going, hey, your neighbor may have the vehicle before you do. I didn't understand that. Like, I understand, obviously, if they would have kept quiet about it and you just started seeing them at dealerships, people wouldn't have been like, why did I order this vehicle now over a year ago? And my neighbor who just went to the dealership went and bought one.
It's a good question, and I will say this too. Jeep did the exact same thing with I think it was called the Launch Edition on the Gladiator, and they made a big hype about it, and then there was some part that was delayed, and it just really made people furious. So
when Toyota did it with Supra, they made everybody mad with that as well.
Yeah.
Manufacturers have this, and then you get collectors. Obviously, you like vintage vehicles. There's vintage vehicles there's always collectors. There's a reason they're collectors. Now manufacturers went in on that vintage, like, oh, people are gonna want these as well as I do. That first edition is not gonna be worth any more.
Oh,
somebody's gonna go park it in their barn right now. I guarantee you. And in 25 years, people are gonna go, oh, well, they built 1 million of those.
Right. The issue, Dave, is that they didn't do anything to really differentiate it from. I mean, they put some stickers on the side and then
one
made
extra
the interior dark blue.
Yeah.
Like, is that what people wanted? Was a dark blue interior? Was that I was really befuddled by that.
And I said they did a great job on the interiors, except for that edition with the blue. I think you guys have it, the light blue seats, or do you have the dark?
It's dark blue. I think it's called navy.
Yes, navy pier or something. Yeah.
Navy pier. Yeah. It's a dark blue. I mean, we made a joke out of it because the exterior is cyber orange, so we're going like Broncos colors. But
yeah.
If it was my choice, I would probably not have gone with the 70s dark blue. I think that was kind of a weird option. So the other thing along that line, and I know you like the interior, I'm a little bit lukewarm on the interior, and I
I
get a
saw
lot
your
of
video.
criticism.
All 200 of us in here. We know
All
you were a little,
200.
we know you were a little iffy on the interior.
Yeah, please don't
And
watch
Tommy,
my
don't
stuff.
let me rib
I-
you too much, man. This is just
No,
this is what I
no,
do.
dude, rip me. I like it. I think it's fun, and I like to hear the counter. Look, I understand that it's a four-wheel drive vehicle, right? And it's built to be off-road and get muddy and get dusty and all that. And you probably don't want like suede on the
Right,
steering wheel.
right.
But at the same time, I think that there's a misconception online now that quality of materials and off-roadability are like two mutually exclusive things that shouldn't belong in like the same world. And if you go to like Australia and you sit in like a 70 series Land Cruiser, or even I think an FJ Cruiser did a good job with this, like they're fundamentally very stripped down vehicles,
Mm-hmm.
but the quality of the instrumentation and the materials and all that you touch feels really good.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like one area in particular that, I mean, it just, I look at it and maybe it's just because I'm a nerd and no one else cares, but the area surrounding the shift lever in the middle of the Bronco has this coarse gray plastic, which I can't find anywhere else on the interior.
Yes, I know
And
right what you're talking about.
I've been fortunate enough to sit in some pre-production cars where like manufacturers doing mock-ups of interiors, and that one particular piece of plastic is, in my opinion, almost identical to what I've seen in some pre-production vehicles.
Well,
Like it looks like they forgot to finish it or ran out of money.
The leather boot around the shifter is thin. Next time you hop in that, touch it. It's super thin. It doesn't feel like, oh, I'm getting leather on this. It's going to be thick, and it just doesn't feel quality. And there's a couple things I noticed. I got to do some rides in these things, and there was a couple things I did notice like that piece you're talking about looks like it's going to scratch so easily.
Yeah, and I know this is another one, and people obviously don't play bongos on top of their dash, but like, if you happen to get a Bronco, I would be especially careful about like placing things on your dash because I'm not sure that that material is going to hold up well to items actually being on top of it. I mean, the thing is, Dave, is if you are buying a $30,000 Bronco, 35, like it's great,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But if you are spending 63 grand on a Bronco, no longer is it just a dedicated off-roader for most folks.
Yeah.
They expect it to have not only the luxuries of a luxury car. It's like pickup trucks, right? Pickup trucks are the same way. At one time, you could get away with vinyl floors and vent windows, and that was it. But nowadays, pickup trucks are the only vehicle, and people want the luxuries. And if you're paying 63K, I mean, it's got to be perfect.
Well, do you and I appreciate you've been here a long time, and I don't want to keep you, Tommy, so don't let me keep you. But
Oh no, it's fun. I'm enjoying it.
But where obviously they benchmark Jeeps, and you drive Jeeps, you understand the straight axle is old technology. There was no way the Bronco was going to get a straight axle. I think companies will convert them, but I don't why. I converted my Xterra to straight axle. I put a Dana 44 under it, and
Oh, did you really?
oh yeah, and
That's
it was fun. But guess what? It suddenly wasn't fun to drive on the highway.
Right.
But
Very
so
true.
Ford was very smart, I think, with the independent suspension. They knew about 90% of the people are keeping them on road. People like cars to feel like how they see themselves, and that's where Bronco wins. You feel like with the Sasquatch package, especially. I'm super capable. You know, I'm sure you see in your area, you see all these guys that go buy Rubicons that have no experience driving them. They go roll them or do stupid stuff because they thought, oh, the vehicle does all this work for me. And they didn't understand. And then you get these vehicles like the Sasquatch package with 35s. And I don't think most people realize 35-inch tire, even though this is a small 35, very small 35, it's still they don't drive with these big tires. So Ford needed that independent front suspension to keep novice from running off the road in these things. And Jeep was over there like, okay. And how long did it take Jeep to go, you know what? Okay, we'll do that too.
Oh, I think, and I have no info to back it up. People think like I have all this background info, and the manufacturers don't tell me any more than they would tell you. But I think just personally, with the French coming in to Jeep and the Stellantis world, we're not going to see that solid front axle for much longer. And I will say that. So it was interesting when I was at the press drive of the Bronco in Austin, Texas, which I'm very fortunate I was able to attend. On the on-road portions, they had all these Broncos lined up, and they had like 30 of them, and it was awesome, and you got to choose from them. But it was interesting that there were very like I only saw one Sasquatch that like you could drive on the road.
Really?
When you got to the off-road, everything was Sasquatched.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean, there was like
you
one or
know
two that
why
weren't.
that is. Like you've been in enough of these vehicles, they know it's
Yeah.
not going to handle like the others.
So I drove a Badlands 4-cylinder, 4-door manual at the Texas event on the road. And I was like, wow, this thing is awesome on the road. Like, you know, on those 33-inch tall tires, you make a turn at speed, you hit bumps at speed, it doesn't do this jiggle, it doesn't jump out of its lane. And I came out of that event saying, this is awesome. This is significantly better than the Wrangler. But then when I took delivery of our Sasquatch on 35s, I'm like, oh, maybe a little better than a Wrangler. But you put 35-inch tall tires on anything,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's gonna dampen all the things that make it so good. So like, I was amazed by the precision of the steering on the 33s. The 35s, it works, right? I think
Right.
it's still better than the Wrangler, but it's not amazing. You put it on 35s, and that composure on imperfections in the road kind of goes away, right?
Yeah.
And that's not the Bronco's fault. You put anything on 35s, and it's going to be worse. But I don't want to create the expectation that your Sasquatch Bronco is going to drive like your Escape or your Explorer. Because
Right.
it isn't. It just
No.
is not going to do that. And it might be on 35s, it might be better than the Wrangler, but it is marginally better than the Wrangler on road, in my opinion, with the big tires.
Did you think Ford in your opinion, do you think Ford was expecting the amount of reservations they got?
Yes, I do. I really do. And I think that, I mean, I don't want to make speculation here, but
Right.
it's if I was a manufacturer, it'd be more convenient if I was having production issues to say, oh, we didn't know. You know, we had no
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
But this is a big company. You know, this is a big company, and they have analysts that know what the market is. And I think they knew that they were going to get those reservations. And I'm a little skeptical as to how many of those are reservations and how many of those, to be quite frank, are dealers saying, oh, we got e-salesmen who ordered 3 of them.
Yeah, I've
You
seen
know?
that a lot, and I'm sure I'm sure you're in some of the Facebook groups, and suddenly there's a plethora of big bins, and for whatever reason, that's the one model I don't think Ford could sell very well. But once again, it's in between a base that you can get basically everything in, and the Black Diamond, which is kind of your mid-tier off-roader,
Yeah.
and so Ford's been shoving big bins down dealers' throats like crazy, and yeah, I'm kind of at a loss with suddenly it's like all these people backed out. All these people backed out. That's the same common thing I see in these Facebook groups. That's why we have these for sale. And you're
I will
like,
say, if this was interesting, I was talking to a dealer, and I was just driving my car around, or the Bronco around, and he said, yeah, this is awesome. I can't wait to get mine. And I said, which one did you get? And he said, oh, well, I ordered 3 of them, and then I decided I'd choose which one I liked the most. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, you ordered 3 of them, and you're going to just decide that day which one you like the most. You know what I
Right.
mean? And it wasn't like 3 of the same ones. It was 3 very different ones. And I thought that was interesting. I forgot about the Black Diamond, by the way, Dave. I don't know why that skipped my mind when doing the Wrangler.
Well,
comparison. That's a Willys.
well,
But
yeah.
that's my favorite. Yeah, I like
And
that a
that's-
lot. You said you changed your order? You had one? and you
I'm
changed it?
going when the order banks open up. I'm going to because
Okay.
I'm just going to go with the Badland. I want the idea. My wife is a better off-road driver than me. Like she just took to it. And I mean, I'm not going to toot my own horn. I'm pretty good, but I have more fun watching her drive and have fun than almost I do anymore. And we talked about my profession. I'm a land surveyor engineer. Like I off-road almost for a living. So at some point it's like, oh, cool, we're doing this again. But she wanted the sway disconnect, and that leads me to that. What is your impression of that? Because I know you in your first video about those was like really like, oh, this is cool, and you show how much flex it does. And where do you stand with that?
The new rule is you can only use it when you're under load because you have to show your friends that it can do that. That is the new official Bronco rule. I think that it's cool. I do think it's cool, and I'm glad that they incorporated it. I'm not convinced it gives you the same advantage that it gives you compared to a solid front axle. So if I'm driving a Rubicon off-road, like the first thing I do is disconnect the sway bar.
Yeah.
Because the ride quality difference, like you mentioned, is so much better. I didn't feel like that advantage was as big on the Bronco, if that makes sense. You know, there's a improvement in ride quality and certainly a slight improvement in articulation.
Right.
But it wasn't as extreme as if you had that solid axle.
So where do you feel with that between that and was it just their answer to the Rubicon package? I mean, did you go, well, they just, I mean, because they offered that in the Raptor, right? I think it's the same feature that they offer.
I don't know if they have that in. Is it going to be? I don't think ours had the sway bar disconnect
I
in the
want to feel
Raptor.
like it was an option. I may be off on
That's
that.
interesting. I don't know. I don't know. I'd have to look into that. I think that it was a response to the Rubicon. And I also think, to be brutally honest with you, as impressive as the vehicle is off-road, I personally felt that there was no need for the GOAT modes. You know, I just, in my opinion, the only vehicle I've ever felt a difference in, and kudos to them, is the Land Rover makes a monster of a difference when you change the
Right,
modes.
right.
The Bronco, when you got your lockers on, like the difference between sand and rock crawl mode when all four wheels are spinning at the same time, not really
Because
that
what? It's
big.
just transmission shift points, anyways, really,
Yeah,
when it
like
comes
six,
down
like
to it.
throttle programming will soften up a little bit.
Mhm.
And the other one I'm not really sure is worth it is the turn assist function, because it's a cool. When they showed it to us on the Bronco Rodeo, I'm like, oh, this is awesome, because what they did is they had a sandy patch
Yep,
that was wide open,
on concrete.
specifically set up where you crank the wheel, you plant the throttle, and the thing whips around.
Hmm.
Well, when I was in the trees with it last week, with 2 inches to spare on each side, I could have had the choice to either do a 3-point turn or steer the wheel all the way left and go full throttle in my brand new $63,000 Bronco, pointed at a
Right,
tree,
right.
right? So the point where it would have been very useful, not really sure that I would comfortably, because you try to do it slowly and you need to overdrive the outside wheels to get that momentum to swing it around.
Yeah.
And it would take a braver man than I to look at that situation in between the two trees and say, all right, I'm going to trust it. Let me give it all she's got.
Well, I seen somebody the other day using it as a drift mode. They had their two-door out there. They pushed it in. They were sliding through parking lots with it, and I was like, oh my god, that's not what it's intended to do, man. You're just, I mean, if there's an idiot, you know, there's always an idiot for a vehicle, and that one found it that day. But
So I
um,
was on the trail with some Jeeps the other day, though, and Ford just nailed this. And I need to talk to the engineer. I don't understand the wizardry behind this. But I was with a bunch of Jeep folks, and they were asking how the lockers work. And I'm like, oh, you push the button, you can turn the front on, and then the rear, or the rear on, and the front, or whatever, any combination. They're like, oh, that's cool. Like, show me. And I clicked the button, and they turned on. And they're like, all right, so now you drive forward, and it engages. And I'm like, no, like you push the button, and then it's on.
yeah,
And they're like, oh, okay, we'll turn it off. Let's see how that's you. You push the button and it's off. Like,
yeah,
what a concept.
yeah.
I mean, I don't know what Nissans were like when you were wheeling with them, but like, especially Toyotas, you got to drive the thing like 14 miles forward and backwards before the locker will actually engage.
Yeah.
It was so refreshing to be able to see that immediacy of on and off. I love that. I thought it was great.
Yeah. No, that definitely. Well, Nissan, I've always had problems with getting them out of four-wheel drive. Like
Okay.
like I felt like you could back up. Sometimes it'll disengage. Sometimes it doesn't. And then all of a sudden you put it forward. Like there's no rhyme to reason with the Nissans that I've done.
So,
Guys, Tommy's been awesome with his time, so I don't want to take up much of his time. But if you got a couple questions, put them in the
yeah.
chats, and we'll try to get to them.
And Dave, I've got some questions for you if you don't mind.
Oh Lord, sure.
All right, because you're very plugged into this community, but what in the name is going on with the hardtops? Can you please shed some light on what is happening? It's some plastic. Like, what's going on?
Well, so that's funny because I'd said something to you in your chat about that I have a source. Now, it's only one source, so I'm not ever going to come out and say, well, it's confirmed. But supposedly Ford they're stopping production of the hardtops right now. They've had such problems with them. Obviously, you guys know what problems you've with just yours in a couple of weeks of having it.
That's a mess. I'm going tomorrow to put a soft top on it. I can't. I just like.
Well, so
Yeah.
did you guys experience the waffling or see the inner core?
So the the dealer we picked ours up from said that the guess what trim they had? The Big Ben they had sold prior. The first one had that kind of like that honeycombing going on.
Mm-hmm.
Ours does not have that, but it has the most incredible number of squeaks I've experienced in a new vehicle. And I actually listened to the Bronco 6G guys. I pulled the panels off and I like siliconed them and I'm like, oh great, these guys know what they're talking about. It'll be better. And I think a lot of them do, but it made almost no difference. And like I was just looking at her top today, and the glue that they use to spray on the felty material like is everywhere.
Yes.
I mean, it's under the felt, but it's also dripping down the sides and it's peeling up, and it's nasty. Like,
Well,
it's not a.
from the source that's been emailing with me about this is they said part of the problem, well, obviously time, it takes time to make these tops. They don't just happen overnight. You know, it's a gel they're using, but supposedly to get production up, they're starting to use 30% less gel than they initially Ford designed it with, which explains why you're seeing the waffling, because that waffling is it's a cardboard inner core. To help make these tops lighter, they use a cardboard inner core, and so they're not getting enough material over that, which is why you're seeing that. But then on top of it, they're not allowing for proper dry time because they're trying to crank these things out. And according to my source on this, that's the problem. And it's just literally they're just trying to throw them out as fast as possible. And I think Ford, at the end of the day, though they'll never say this, they're like, we've had such a disaster with this thing. We have to get them out. We'll warranty the stuff later. And what was it, a couple of weeks ago, somebody on Bronco 6G was reporting that Ford signed the dotted line on a new manufacturer to build tops for the body, or the body color tops and the black tops. But I think it's for everything. I think Webasto
Really
has lost their contract. And why not? They brought it on themselves of sorts.
Look, I do know some of the folks at Webasto, and
see, I can never say that properly.
It's a weird name. It's a weird name, and it's a very interesting company because I think a lot of folks are under the impression that like Ford went with this little company and like, oh my God, it exploded. Like Webasto is a monstrous company. They're German-based. I think they're hating this because they want to stay so far under the radar and just do their thing and build tops. And to be frank with you, I mean, if you see a convertible on the road, it's got a Webasto top.
The C8 Corvette.
Everything. Every convertible from Porsche to Chevrolet. You know, if there's a brand out there that has a soft top, even a retractable hard top, it's Webasto. They have all the patents pretty much for everything. They've got licensing deals that will just blow your mind. And I just like, it's amazing to me that this company is having allegedly such a hard time with production of these tops. And they do the soft top too, which we talked about a little bit. And I've heard that people are having some issues with that. And they actually told me an interesting story. So Jeep, a long while back, they did a Liberty with a retractable soft top. I don't know if you remember this. It was this Liberty, which was like the SUV, and there was this panel that was really cool. It would go all the way back. And the secret with the Liberty soft top is that if it breaks, it's broken forever.
Oh, because much like the Murano Cabriolet.
Same thing. I've heard the same thing. If it breaks, it's broken forever.
Yep.
And the reason that the Jeep top was so bad is because Webasto had every single patent that Jeep needed, and they didn't want to pay Webasto for the licensing, so they developed it on their own with their own patent-free, solution.
Yeah.
And it just didn't work. Like they couldn't do it without the patents that this company had. And then it was a nightmare. It leaked constantly. It broke constantly.
And that sounds like the problem here, because the people who developed the inner core of this is an Italian company. Like, it's a bunch of companies that, trying to bring new technology. I get it, but it's at some point do you think that Ford was like, man, we just should have built a hard top and just kind of eased into the soft tops?
So Dave, I got to ask you, because this is a question that I think people are wondering, like if you were in the position now where maybe you weren't a day one reservation, but you were, first week or first month, still don't know when your build date's going on. You're watching All Terrain Nation, hearing about these top issues. You're going on the forums. Is it worth the hassle to wait for the Bronco, or should these folks go look at a 4Runner, a Colorado ZR2, the Jeep? What are you telling folks right now? What are you thinking?
So ZR2 is so old. Like I get it, because I have a pretty good mid-sized truck following, and the Chevy, like the twins, I don't know what they're doing. Like GM's been super quiet about their mid-sized trucks. I hear 23. I don't know what you guys hear, but for a refresh. But I don't know who. Like for me, knowing I'm a day 3 reservation, and at worst case scenario, I thought, okay, by October I would get one. Well, I'm buying it for my channel. So, you got to have the latest and greatest. A 21, if I got it by November, December as a 21, even though it's identical, what do I do? I've got a 21 like everybody else does. So that's why I, for the meantime, went and got a Gladiator. I thought it gives me a chance to, because I had a YJ with a hard roof, but it was a one-piece top that was a nightmare to deal with.
Yeah.
So
Oh yeah.
I thought it gives me a chance to deal with the tops, to kind of understand that market a little bit better. And the doors come off, so I can understand a little bit better what it's like, the newer vehicles, dealing with that side of it. And then when my Bronco come in, but I will say it is getting harder to want to buy a Bronco. Um, the only thing that they can save them is they better come out with some good colors for 22, and
That's interesting.
don't come with the same stuff you have. Like, because Jeep is great about offering colors that the rest of FCA doesn't get, like Nacho on the Wranglers and stuff. They better tap into that sort of, we want to be unique to just us. You know, they want to sell
Yeah.
Bronco as its own brand, basically, like Mustang's doing. So they need to let it kind of operate as its own brand, bring some excitement to it. I think the top issue, let's be honest, they're going to, we're dealing
Yeah.
with what, a month and a half of production.
Right.
This is what you expect at a month and a half production. And the only thing that bothers me with Bronco right now is to make people hold off on buying something else. Is it's fun, you know, it's different than Wrangler. And at the end of the day, that's probably why I bought Xteras over Frontier or Forerunners, was because it was just completely different. I didn't want to be part of that crowd. So some of those people that were buying Wranglers was like, you know what, this is my crowd. So wait if you want a vehicle, wait on it. And I hate seeing people also that are downgrading, going, well, I can't get my Badlands. Oh, there's a big bend over there, I'm just gonna do that instead. It's like, no, you saw these features that you wanted. Just be patient and wait for it. Now, obviously, there's leases to deal with. People were planning purchases. Ford kind of messed that up, not intentionally, but you know. So if you have to get something else, I think even though the used market is like outrageous right now, I would find something a little more affordable, maybe a 5-8 year old car. Be happy with it for 6 months to a year. Let them get these problems out of it, and then get your Bronco and be happy.
I'm in an yeah. It's an interesting predicament because I think Ford, like we talked about earlier, looked at the Wrangler and they said, we're just going to make everything a little bit better, right? We're going to make the on-road dynamics a little bit better. We're going to offer more standard features, not too many,
Right.
but enough to be a little bit better. We're going to have a slightly bigger tire, right? And I think that for a lot of folks, the overall package is going to be more usable for their daily lives than the Jeep.
Yes.
I mean, I'm just frank about that.
Sure.
But my problem with the situation is it's not a big enough void between the Wrangler and the Jeep and the Ford, where if I was like a JL owner, I'm not sure they've done enough to convince me that I need to take the depreciation hit of my Jeep and go to the Ford.
Yeah.
It's an amazing vehicle. People are going to love it, but is it good enough to, you know, for me to sell my Woolies right now, lose 5K or whatever, and then go wait in line? I don't think it is. You know what I mean?
Where do you stand with that, though, with some dealerships requiring large down payments?
Oh,
So-
I'm totally not really cool with that, dude. I mean, and I've talked to some folks that, you know, dealers committed to one thing and then, oh, well, I don't know, the demand is higher than we thought. And I just, like, the shenanigans I just can't deal with it. I mean, think about this. You're putting down, in some cases, $50,000, $60,000 on a vehicle. I think you should be treated like royalty. When I bought that Jeep, like, I expected myself to like feel like I was a really valued customer, that I wasn't going to play games, that I was going to go in, pay my money, and leave with the vehicle.
And I
right?
think that's where Jeep wins, and why Jeep's been real popular, because you go into a Jeep dealership, no matter if you're buying an S or a Rubicon, you're still buying that Jeep. And they seem to, Jeep, for whatever, you know, in the 80s and 90s, Jeep was a mess. Like, they had no direction. They had basically two vehicles, an SUV and the Wrangler. But now you go into I imagine in Colorado, you guys have some really nice Jeep dealers because you're catering to a larger audience than maybe here in Tennessee. But I have noticed I can go into my dealership and they will treat me, if I'm looking at the S, they treat me great. Well, the problem with Ford, I think, is, you know, for one, all dealers are hungry right now. They're all hurting. You know, especially if
Yeah, it's
you're
a tough time. No
yes.
doubt. Yeah, it's a
And
tough
at
time.
some point, I did a video where I went through some dealerships here locally, and they were marking up their more profitable vehicles $5,000. And normally I would be pissed off about that because I'm like, look, man, you're just gouging people. They don't have anything to sell. They got to keep the lights on. So right now I understand that, but with Wrangler, it's been kind of a cool thing is unless you just get a bad dealership, we sort of were locked into a price over a year ago for a vehicle that Ford's stressed to their dealers, do not mark them up to, your retail customers, that even if it takes me 2 years now to get mine, I'm not going to be marked up for 2 years of pricing that it would it's going to cost me in a couple of years. So in some ways, like, I know it sucks to wait on these things, but it's also a blessing that Ford's guaranteed for 22. You're still paying the same price you would have for 21.
The tough part about the dealer model, and this is why I think that I really appreciate dealers and I understand the purpose, but I also think it might be time for a change. Is that from an OEM standpoint, from Ford's standpoint, me and you are really not the customer.
Right.
Right. The customer at the end of the day is the dealer. They're the ones that are buying the vehicle from Ford and then reselling it to us. And that creates a lot of conflict. So, for example, this was a big deal a few months ago. We were just bombarded with emails of really upset F-150 order holders who had placed F-150 orders months and months and months ago and were told your truck is delayed because of chips. And they're like, that's understandable, right? We had COVID, we had all these world problems, and yeah, I get it. But then the reason they came to us is because their dealers all of a sudden started getting trucks, and then more trucks, and then more trucks. Well, theirs were sitting on lots waiting for chips.
Yeah.
And that's because the dealers could sell these trucks as they were getting for much higher prices than what they had promised the customer 6 months ago.
Yeah.
They probably promised the customer 6 months ago before this all exploded, hey, we'll give you 10K off MSRP, right? Because that's what it was back 8 months ago. But now, right, they're getting in some cases over MSRP. So I think there's a fundamental conflict there, and I really hope that Ford is not doing that with the Bronco. I've got faith that they're not, I hope, but it's definitely a concern of mine. What do you think about that?
Well, they've definitely, Bronco's priority one for Ford right now. They've had, that's been such a black eye for them. Like, just all the problems they've had, because I think last year the Bronco was the best reveal out of all. It was a tough time to reveal cars. Normally we're going to auto shows. Like I said, I was at Chicago. I was hoping, obviously Chicago was right before the world stopped. I was hoping to do New York and a few of these auto shows, and all these manufacturers had to learn how to do it digitally. And the F-150 was a nightmare. That was horrible. Having Dennis Leary come out there, everybody's like 20 feet away from each other. It just wasn't very well done. But Bronco was so simple. You got Bryan Cranston with that smooth voice, just it's like your granddad kind of talking to you.
Dude, it was good.
Yes.
Yeah.
And dude, I've been a hardcore Nissan guy, and I seen that video, and I'm a day 3 reservation holder only because I had to look at my inner soul and go, Dave, are you willing to, Nissan's not making anything fun anymore. Are you willing to, and I've had Fords, but I was like, okay, I think I'm going to do it. And I told my wife, I went downstairs and she's like, why are you grabbing your wallet? And I said, I'm going to put a deposit down on a Bronco. And she was like, okay. I was like, wow, that was the easiest purchase ever, or easiest attempt at a purchase. But I do think Ford did such a killer launch of this thing, and their PR department did great initially. And then I think the realities of, it came with a color top. They had all these options. Oh, color, body matching color roof, black roof. Oh, we're going to do the porthole in the middle, and all these things. And I think that they kind of got caught with their pants down and they made too many promises they couldn't deliver on.
I honestly think that, and this is not just Ford, this is across the industry. A lot of the manufacturers now are going with the Tesla model.
Yes.
Where you reveal a vehicle that's just over the moon, and then you hope that the hype lasts to the point where folks are actually going to start taking delivery with them.
And let them finance it for you. Literally $190,000.
Exactly.
100. You finance development there.
Right. Yeah. And then it works with some vehicles. I'm not sure it works with others. So, for example, in the EV truck world, the Rivian is the hottest thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the hottest thing, and it was the hottest thing, and then it's delay after delay. And I'm not sure that it's going to be the hottest thing because in that time, Ford's come out with the F-150 Lightning, right?
Yeah.
That sucked a lot of the
Yeah.
room.
A development partner is outdoing you with your own tech, basically.
So it's a very interesting launch. And I question the decision to launch Bronco Sport ahead of full size, in that you have a very knowledgeable community. I'm looking at the chat right now, and you folks are going so far beyond what the average person. I mean, the average person would never know what Webasto is, and that Ford doesn't build the hardtops, right? Like you guys are so plugged in. Our community, we have some of that, but we've got a lot of folks that like just want a cool looking vehicle to go take to the campsite.
Yeah.
And I would have to say that's probably the vast majority of folks, aren't dealing with this kind of inside knowledge. And there has been a tremendous amount of confusion on our end on what the difference is between a Bronco and a Bronco Sport. And we've had so many emails and so many people come up to me being like, I bought my Bronco last week. And this was like a month ago. And I'm like, you did? Whoa, how did you get one? Yeah. He's like, oh, it was on the lot. I'm like, well, okay, that's cool. You bought a great vehicle. Bronco Sport, amazing vehicle.
Yeah.
But I even, driving the Bronco yesterday, I was going through a crowded part of my town with the windows down, and I overheard a conversation from this family having dinner, and they said, oh, Dad, look, that's a new Bronco. And Dad said, no, that's the little Bronco. And I'm like, this is not the little Bronco. It's got 35s on it. It's not the little Bronco. But people see what they read at the front of the vehicle, and then they assume that's the one. And I think that sells a lot of Bronco Sports, but I also think it leads to a lot of confusion.
Well, and the idea is, I used to sell vintage guitars. You always had the most expensive thing, so people will come look at it, and then they buy the cheaper thing. Well, Ford did the opposite. They had the cheaper thing and thought, well, eventually we'll get the more expensive item there. And how would you like to be? Because I know some Bronco Sport owners bought them going, oh, I'm going to get a Bronco too. And like, you're still waiting on that. You thought, oh, I'm going to have both of these in the driveway, which I've reviewed the Bronco Sport. It's okay. It's what that segment is now. It's just good enough. Everything about that segment is just good enough to get me back from wherever I'm going.
From all-terrain nation standpoint, I agree. I think like it's probably good enough. I do have to say though, compared to like its competition, like the Ford Escape, which is a little confusing, I think it's really good. And I think that is exactly what people wanted, which was a more rugged look, some slightly bigger tires, make it square cells. Yeah. And I think that was a really smart tactical decision. Although I'm curious as to what's going to happen to Escape now. Like, if I was walking to a Ford dealer looking for a small SUV, as a young guy in his 20s, there'd be no reason I would get the Escape, right?
Right. Yeah, because that's mom's car.
Yeah, because it's the Bronco Sport's cool. It says Bronco on the front of it. And I think they did a really nice job with the little guy, but it's certainly from, like a four-wheel drive standpoint, from an enthusiast standpoint, it's not the one people want.
Do you think they sort of oversold the capabilities of that little thing? Or maybe like, oh, it's a Bronco. Oh, we lost Tommy's sound again.
Am I back?
There
Hello?
you go.
All right, sorry, I'm trying to go between the chat. It's not happening. I think that they didn't necessarily oversell the capabilities relative to their competition. So I think, and I get a lot of flack for this, and we don't get Subarus because of this, but I think that Subaru oversells their capability, and it leaves a lot of people stuck in ditches. Yes. And I hate to say that. In Colorado especially, where it's a huge market, there's a lot of folks that are taking Subarus where they shouldn't be, and then it ends up with a lot of trail recoveries. Yeah. And then ask them why, and they said, well, on the brochure it had it going up a dirt road, and I thought that was the same as a trail. Yes. So from that standpoint, I think that the Bronco Sport is better than any Subaru you can buy. It's a good little vehicle. But there's an insistence that a goat mode will get you unstuck, right? There's this kind of interpretation that, oh, I'm stuck in a hole. I'm going forward and backward. I've pushed the center lock button. I've pushed the rear lock button, but I got a goat mode. It'll get me out. Like, it's software. Yeah. It's not going to get you out. Yep. Yeah. Well, so I think from that standpoint, maybe a little bit.
And you're dealing with little garbage all-terrain tires that just aren't made to do what you're trying to do anyways. But I have seen some lifted already that actually kind of look kind of cool.
Yeah, they do look cool. One of our viewers bought 2 of them. He loved it so much he had a Bronco reservation and he went out and bought 2 for the price
Wow.
of his Bronco or something. Like it was nuts. But I think like Ford has done an excellent job with the full size Bronco, and the bottom line is they got to figure out a way to get him out the door. And the solution of being like, well, it was this supplier's fault, like that's great. But at the end of the day, it's not a Ford Bronco by Webasto,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
People don't really care. They want to know where their $100 is, where their order deposit is, and they want their vehicle. And it's hard to say, but it's true.
Well, as I asked you just a couple more questions, and once again, I do appreciate your time.
You're good. I'm loving it.
Where do you see they've teased a Heritage Edition for this thing? You know, they were real quick about that. Of like, oh my God, this thing's so popular. Let's tease a white top. You know, everybody saw that launch, the Cactus Gray one with the white top, was a throwback looking Bronco, and everybody was like, well, why can't I order that? So Ford quickly was like, okay, we're gonna do a Heritage Edition. Well, you can't get the current Broncos out in a timely manner. Then Ford's like, Mike Levine starts tweeting pictures of the Bronco R or whatever, the Bronco Raptor, whatever they're going to call the thing, up in the air. And you're teasing this community to no end, and you can't follow through with what you initially set out to do. And then, there's definitely a hybrid version coming. There's been too many photos of that thing with the big cables underneath that you can see exposed. And then the audience wants a bigger engine. And guys, a V8 is never coming in that thing. Ever.
No, you're right.
Ford has all in on EcoBoost technology. Like even the F-150s, they sell more the V6s than anything now. They don't sell a lot of V8s. I guess F-250 stuff like that. But like Ford is going down this path with the Mustang, the Mach-E shows you where they're going.
Oh, and Dave, what's their Halo car? The Ford GT, right?
Yeah.
They could have put any engine they wanted in the GT, but they specifically chose the 3.5 EcoBoost, in my opinion, to show off its capabilities, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's where the company's going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So all this, they have all these things they're wanting to do, and you can't get a top out. The most simple part probably on that vehicle to manufacture, you can't get that top out. You're lucky that you guys actually got all the sound deadening materials on it.
Really? That's
there's dealers. There was one Town and Country TV on YouTube. Bronco Nation loves those guys. They got a black diamond in, and he's showing it on video. One panel, the passenger panel, has the sound deadening material. Nothing else on any of the vehicle, and he's like trying to show how to take these tops off. I'm like, why would you show? There's 100 videos on how to take a top off. You're like showing the issue. But then I also seen in the same video, he was showing the rear AC vents and heater vents. The quality of that is horrible because it's buried. They pulled the mats out, and it's still mostly buried in the vinyl that they put in the floorboard to begin with. You guys you should look at yours.
I will. Yeah.
Because sure. I guarantee there's a lot of little weird quality issues. And normally vehicles have, there's always one thing that you can never test for enough. But the poor Broncos just seems to have so many things going against it right now.
Just to speak on that subject a little bit, I appreciate what Bronco Nation is doing for the Bronco community. But if you take a very wide look at that strategy, it appears that Ford is really trying to use them almost appear as like an independent outlet.
Oh my
to
God.
Review their vehicles.
Do you want to go there? Because you guys are on there, or you have an audience there, and I've talked to those guys. I've met David, the main guy over there. But they will constantly say, we're not Ford. And I'm like, oh, well, I know you're not, because I've tracked where your business name comes from and everything. You're just an advertising agency that Ford basically owns. But I've owned forums. I had a Nissan Xterra forum, the Xterra Nation. I started from ground up. I've had Frontier forums. I know what it costs to start them up, and I know that manufacturers just don't give you access. Like, oh, here, let's you take pictures inside the plant. Like, these are trade embargoed areas. You don't get to just do what you want. And for those guys to play it off like, oh, we're just the official forum. Like, Okay. But it's much like Bronco 6G. Those guys, oh, we're independent. No, you're owned by what everybody else owns. I can't think of the company right now, but they own every forum out there now. Like, it's such big business.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's I like that plant example because I'm very fortunate to go on these like press trips,
mm-hmm.
and so many times there are plant tours, and anytime you go to a plant tour, I always try to opt out of it because they always say absolutely no cameras.
Yeah,
We're gonna put stickers on every camera you have. You're gonna leave them at home. You can't bring them.
yeah.
So it's very telling when a source has allegedly independent access into a plant, right? Like
Right.
that's an interesting thing. That's a
Well, there's
great point.
trade secrets. They don't want everybody to know how they
No, no, of
manufacture
course not.
everything.
Yeah, imagine my nerdy ass walking around with the camera and oh, what is that? Like that would be a disaster for a lot of
Well,
companies.
I
So
worked
it's
for
very
the
much
Nissan
that.
manufacturing plant here in Smyrna, Tennessee, and I watched them walk an engineer out. He brought his phone. He just randomly pulled it out of his pocket to do something. Gone. Like,
Interesting.
they took him out. Like, these guys don't play
Serious.
around with this stuff, and they don't just give access to give access.
Going back to your question about the special editions, I think Dave, I think you nailed it on the head. Jeep makes a tremendous amount of money on these special editions, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a very smart business plan. Like I remember in the JK, there was not only like the Freedom Edition and the Halo Edition, but there was one called the Dragon Edition, which was black and gold and had a dragon mural on the side of it, like just ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
But people like that stuff. Like they eat it all up because they think it's unique. They think it's different than what their neighbor's going to have. They're like, oh yeah, I'll pay the money for the mural on the side of the Wrangler.
What was it? What was the game edition? The Modern Warfare edition.
Oscar Mike. There was an Oscar Mike and then a Halo
Yeah,
edition.
yeah.
I think it was Halo. Yeah, people loved it.
Mm-hmm.
Like as an enthusiast, you and I are like, okay, that's a sticker package.
Yeah.
But people like, oh, I'm unique with my gold star on the hood or whatever it is, right? So it's very smart. But what Jeep has always done is you don't roll out the special editions until you're at least a year into production of the standard lineup. I mean,
Yeah.
we're just now starting to see special editions of the JL Wrangler, which has been out since 2018,
Mm-hmm.
right? We've got like the Freedom Edition and the high altitude, and it's just paint and bumpers and wheels and stuff. And it's smart business, but it's one thing to release the editions before you can get the main product line out the door. So I think
Or even teasing it.
yeah, even tease it. I mean, it's like that's a very interesting strategy because it's like these manufacturers are so buttoned down in everything they do, and they won't tease a new product until the very last minute because they're worried it'll impact sales of the current product, like the Tundra,
Oh yeah.
right? Oh, like they don't want to. It's a frustrating thing to watch this Tundra roll out from our
But
perspective.
the 1796 edition and all that stuff that
Oh.
Toyota likes to do. Oh.
Yeah, for sure. But
Or
if
my favorite
Toyota
is
comes- Yeah.
dealers with the Texas edition.
yeah, I don't get that. I don't understand that.
We put a badge on it. Now it's a Texas edition.
And it's like Toyota doesn't want to show the new Tundra and give you all the specs because if it is in fact a year out from production, people are going to be like, I'm not going to buy the Tundra.
Yeah.
Why would I buy the current Tundra? It's going to wait for the new Tundra.
Well, and then it kills sales. It just
yeah.
like if you were to look at Frontier sales right now, because they're still producing the old body style, it's nil to none now. Dealers aren't ordering those because they know September you get the new one on the showroom floor. So why would you? Yeah, Ford's almost butchering their own sales by people
I
going.
want to. Yeah. No,
Go ahead.
for it. Finish it. I'm sorry.
By
No, I
people,
just wanna-
sorry, Tom. By people going, hey, oh, Bronco R is coming out. I'm pushing my reservation back. And some Ford, honestly, I think purposely started doing that, maybe to slow reservations down a little bit.
Okay. That's interesting. I want to get your input on something that I've been thinking a lot about, and I haven't like talked about it on camera, but I think it's an interesting standpoint. So right now, like if you look on the enthusiast forums, like steel wheels are super hot.
Mhm.
And it seems to be like within the last couple of years, and I'm like all on board with that train, and I like these like muted colors.
All right.
Do you think that in 5 years, steel wheels are going to be like, what the heck were we thinking? You know, is this going to be like one of those things where like, oh, it looks like a Toyota Yaris from 15
Well,
years ago?
I think steel wheels are all due to Overland Guy. Overland Guy is in a lot of cases military guy or wannabe military guy. If you look at a big portion of Overland crowd, a lot of them are gun guys, which I have nothing against that. But they're wanting to live this military lifestyle, and look at the old Hummers. They didn't come with anything flashy, or the Humvees. They were just a basic tan wheel that you got on it. I feel like some of those guys are trying to live live that life is why that's been made popular. But there is a practical thing to steel wheels. You can't bend them on the trails as easy, or if you do, you can take a hammer to those things and kind of
Can.
straighten them out a little bit to get you out of a bad situation. You crack an alloy wheel,
Done.
you're out of luck, man.
And that's the argument I made with my Gladiator, and that is a very good argument. And I didn't use a hammer once on the trail, right? Like if I bend the wheel, I'm going right to the spare.
Right.
But I think it is an interesting, to be totally frank, Dave, I think part of the reason that SUVs and four-wheel drives are just such a popular thing in our culture right now is bringing back to what we started with. It's like the discussion of I want to have the cool view on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be that person who's going out there and showing off my persona as being adventurous and tackling the terrain. And I think that's a really hot thing in our culture right now.
Right.
And I think that's not only driving sales of real off-roaders like Broncos, but it's also driving sales of crossovers like Pathfinders. And that's why we see like Timberland editions of the Explorer, right? I mean, I think it cannot be understated what a big impact social media is having on what people are buying and what that says about you and how you are perceived to others. And I make this argument in the Wrangler community too. One of the biggest dealers in the West for Jeeps is a guy we work with, and he was talking about how when the JL Wrangler came out, and it's still the case, you had all these customers flocking to the dealer, and the salesman would come out and be like, well, let's talk about trims and specs. Like, if you need a locking diff, talk to me about your off-road needs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people would 100% of the time say, I need a Rubicon in black. And they'd be like, well, look, here's the deal. That's a $55,000 vehicle we have on the lot. If you're not going to off-road it, how about this one for $37,000? And they'd be like, nope, I need a Rubicon in black, and I need it now. And that drives so many sales toward really off-road machines. From my experience with them, yeah.
Jeep has been brilliant with that, by the way. Like a company that couldn't, they had a Sahara and basically the Rubicon forever. Somehow they started putting, people wanted to hide the tow hooks. Jeep was like, no, we're going to accent that. Like the Rubicon, you look at the brilliant to badge it so big on the hood. Like it's such great branding that now I can be with people who don't know what a Rubicon is, and they know that's the bad boy. And that's something that I think Bronco has a problem with is Badlands, which whatever you call it, I don't care. But the silly badging, the triangle badging that they do on the side, they had such an opportunity for that classic Bronco script from their Generation 1 to put right there, and they chose to, I don't know.
It would have been bad, like a giant, like Sasquatch on the side, right, or something crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like us would be like, oh, that's silly. Why would you want that? But people would really dig it. And that's the same exact issue. And it's my biggest problem with the Wrangler 392, that crazy Hemi V8 Wrangler, is yes, it's very cool piece of engineering and it's very quick and it sounds amazing. But the people that are buying those, right, they're spending $90K in a Wrangler. They want to buy the biggest, they want flames down the side and side pipes, and they want
it's status.
Yeah, it's all about it, and they totally missed the mark on that.
How long do you think they build that?
How long are
the 392?
Oh, if you want one, I would buy one yesterday. I don't think it's going to be around much longer at all.
I don't either.
No, it's just, but I've got a lot of skepticism about this new French partnership that Jeep has gone under. The French build some incredible cars, but I really don't think they understand the American market of four-wheel drives.
Well, could you imagine if the merger would have happened with them, Renault, Nissan, and everything all together, like all these sort of not poorly run companies, all as one super poorly run company?
And I gotta say, like people make a lot of jokes, like, "Oh, that's a Fiat Wrangler," but what Sergio Marchioni, who was the head of FCA for a long time, was very smart at is he saw the brands that were working, which was Jeep and Ram. Those were the brands that were making the money, and they said, go do it. Just go do what you need to do. And then within the brands, we were very fortunate, like with the Wrangler, there were a couple of really dedicated engineers who said, it's got to be this and this and this, because there were a lot of people saying, and I've talked to some engineers that, like, the Wrangler was this close to being independent suspension.
Well, you said something about that earlier, or you were going somewhere with that, and I think it's coming close. I think ultimately all the Wrangler trims except Rubicon the next generation go independent suspension, and I think they leave the Rubicon alone as a, okay, you're going to spend $60,000, $70,000. We'll cater to you a little bit, or maybe 75K the way cars are going.
That's crazy. Dude, I think even for Rubicon, I think that this is the end of an era for Jeep. If you want to buy and experience a new Wrangler with its capability right now, this is it. Like, I think this is as high as the Wrangler's going to get from an old school off-road capability of body on frame, solid axles. Because like you were talking about earlier, from a noise vibration standpoint, like, it just makes no sense. From an on-road standpoint, it makes absolutely no sense. And 99.9% of people would rather have it ride better, look just as cool, and then lose everything, right? I mean, most of the folks I talk to, like within my friend group that want Wranglers, they don't even know what 4-low is. They don't even know what a locker is, right? And Ford's going to have that thing too. Within us, like in the great folks watching, you know, we appreciate, you know, what a locker is and why you want that. And I'm hoping that in the time being, Jeep looks at what Ford has done and said, look, we have this Willys package like mine. Why aren't we offering it with the rear locker? You know, the hardcore off-roader enthusiast can go buy a Black Diamond and spec it with a rear locker without having to spend the money to get the Sasquatch in the front locker, which nobody really needs. I'm going to just put that out there. Nobody needs a front locker. Unless you're...
I need one.
Oh, Dave might need a front locker. Dave, you can have your front locker, but...
There's aftermarket for that too, you know? There really is.
Look, you're spending what, 50K, 40K on a Wrangler, and you're going to put it, or on a Bronco, and you're going to put it into situations where you need a front locker, like right off the bat. The third owner needs a front locker. Let me get this straight.
I do agree. Yeah.
Yeah, third, fourth owner, they want that front locker all day long. But the first owner...
No, the first dent's going to be the hardest, I will say.
And speaking of Land Rover, they used to tell us that the first time a Land Rover would go off-road was 7 years, 75,000 miles. That was the very first time that vehicle was going to hit dirt.
Yeah, I don't doubt that.
They have gone an interesting direction where they kind of leaned into that street bias attitude, right? I mean, the Defender has the best four-wheel drive system, I think, on the market, just out of the box, I'll say that. But it's, like I demonstrated, it's an off-road package that you can get on 20-inch wheels, right? Which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And it's full independent and unibody and all that. And I think that that's good for the short term. But in the long term, what's going to build that brand and that credibility for off-road ability is stuff like skid plates and rock sliders.
Well, aftermarket always takes care of these problems too. They see a problem, a weakness in a manufacturer, and they always take care of that problem. And that's where Jeep's been real good at. Jeep goes, look, we'd make it. You guys do whatever you want. You know, Jeep doesn't hide these vehicles. They give them to every manufacturer. Go to the SEMA scans. Here, man, here's our specs on this. Go have fun with it. Build whatever you want to build.
What's Ford doing? Is Ford doing that too? Is there?
They had a SEMA scan session, but yeah, we're in such a weird time for that, you know, with COVID. And then it's out in California, which is another added headache to deal with just because of their restrictions are different from probably your home state's restrictions. And, but no. I think that's one thing. You know, Toyota gets a pretty good aftermarket. I think Bronco is going to be number 2 with aftermarket. I really do. I think when companies like 4 Wheel Parts go, okay, we're taking this on. Yeah, there's a big market there. Though I'm not a big fan of 4 Wheel Parts, it is still nice to see somebody out of the gate having parts for your vehicle from day one.
It's the other smart thing that I think they're doing well, and Toyota just never figured this out, and Jeep did well too, is you know, in-house aftermarket parts, right? That not only you can warranty, but the key there is, you know, folks don't want to spend $2,500 on a bumper or a lift kit, but if you can finance that in for another $10 a month. Yep. Oh my God, I can afford $10 a month.
Why does every dealership, and I bet they do it in your area, we'll offer lift kits, we'll do this and that, finance it in, and suddenly you've got a Silverado that's $100,000.
Yeah, dude, you're right. You're absolutely right, and it's just smart business. Like Ford, what you know, the part catalog, they say 500 parts or something. It's some big number that they're offering. I think that's a really smart idea, and then you have that added peace of mind that, like, all right, well, you know, if something craps out, I'm not going to be on the hook for my $60,000 vehicle being out of warranty. Right. In theory.
The lease part though is the funny part to me, because you can lease all that stuff. The rooftop tents, all that stuff is leasable, and I'm like,
I didn't realize that.
Yes.
I didn't realize that.
Yes.
Very interesting.
And to read it, you know, they have a whole breakdown of how you're supposed to return it when your lease is up. I'm like, really? Like, suddenly my $30,000 Lease, a lease should be affordable or more affordable than a car payment, and then it's more than your car payment.
So, circling back to the very beginning, I know, and I've listened to you and Tim, and I've got very differing viewpoints on the world of electrification, and probably not going to be popular.
I'm somewhere in the middle. I
electric
guarantee you. Tim is anti-EV.
Are you not fully on Tim's boat?
I'm with trucks. I'm not anti. I'm skeptical because what I do for a profession, my truck will idle all day long. I've got an air conditioner running or whatever. I don't see that with EV just yet. So that's where I'm at.
No, I actually was very much in favor of off-road EVs until I drove this 4xe off-road and the range dropped from 27 in the real world to 3.
Yes.
Like, that was a big deal to me.
Did you expect it to be that bad?
Not even remotely, no. Because the folks in PR on every company I've talked to, and I've asked a lot of them, even if they're not quite ready to release their off-roaders, I say, what's the off-road range going to be? And they're going to be like, well, you're moving slowly. In traffic, for example, you don't use a lot of electricity, so why would you lose a lot of electricity on the trail? And that always kind of like ran alarm bells with me because we had a Model X we took off-road, and the consumption was off the charts, even on mild off-roading. But this Wrangler really, really enforced that with me. And in like the world of EVs, it's got what's called a 17 kilowatt hour battery. Tesla has like 100. So it's a much smaller battery. But on paper and in the real world, it's rated at 21 in the city. You can probably squeeze closer to 30 out of it. And then
Nathan was saying y'all did a loop on it. We're surprised.
Yeah, 27. Yeah. You got 27 in the real world on highway and city. And that's pretty good. I think that if you are looking for a vehicle to commute to work with and your commute is 30, 40 miles, oh my God, dude. Because electricity is really cheap at night. It drives like a normal Wrangler. It's super quiet. It's fast as heck. So it makes a lot of sense if you've got a short commute. And then if it craps out, who cares? You go to gasoline. But the secret with the plug-in hybrid Wrangler is the $7,500 tax credit. So if your tax liability is, $7,500 or more, you're going to get a full $7,500 back, plus state incentives. So, in some cases, that could be $10K off, realistically. Like, you're still going to pay the MSRP, but then you're going to get that money back on your taxes.
Depending on state, because your state, I know for a long time, my buddies over at Boulder, like, they sold more Leafs. They sold more Nissan Leafs than anybody.
Because we got $7,500 federal, and then we got $5K from the state.
Yeah.
And now it's like down to $2K or something, which is still considerable. And then a lease deal on the 4xe is ridiculous.
Yeah, that's what you were saying.
If you are looking forward to your Bronco, but you want to wait for them to get rid of some of the quality issues maybe in the first year, you're kind of skeptical of the Jeep, like, just lease a 4xe. It's ridiculously cheap for a Rubicon compared to any of the gas models. It's well equipped. It's going to have the full warranty. So even though that's a first year vehicle, it's going to have some problems potentially. But, dude, it's like I don't want to misquote it, but I remember my dealer telling me what I could get one for, and I like fell off my chair. It was that affordable.
Well, one big final question for you, since we're talking about EVs. Every manufacturer out there now is going, by 2030, we're solid. We're completely EV. In my opinion, technology's not moving that fast. Battery technology is what's holding everything back right now. You can get 1 million miles out of one if you want a train as your battery, a long train. But, Ford is claiming with the Lightning that, you're going to get this and that. And then you find out, if you want to spend $100,000, you can get some mileage out of them. But you can't as a basic. You got Tesla coming out with, eventually coming out with the Cybertruck. You got, like you were saying earlier, Rivian is... I know they're close, but, I've got a friend that went from Nissan over to Rivian as a quality guy. Like they're getting their ducks in a row to get these things out.
It's an interesting question, Dave. And my advice to you, and this is my challenge to you, Dave. When your daughter becomes driving age, or even next year, if you're like, my Bronco's not quite ready, I need a second or a third car, go out and buy a really crap EV. Yeah. Because there was this group of cars in like the mid-2010s called compliance cars. And basically, California said to the manufacturers, you guys can keep building your V8s, but you got to sell some electric cars. So these companies were like, crap. Well, what do we do? So they took like a Fiat 500, they slapped some batteries in it. They took a Chevy Spark, slapped some batteries in it. They were stupid expensive when they were new. Every manufacturer pretty much lost tons of money on them in development and what they were selling them for. It was a bloodbath. But the result of that is you ended up with a lot of small electric cars that only go 80 to 100 miles on a charge and depreciate like a rock.
Oh my God,
So
yes.
a 500E was probably 30, 35K. 2 years later, 7,
Yeah.
right? And they're still 6 to 7. Um, but they're really, really good cars. Leafs are not great because they have air-cooled batteries.
Yeah.
But get a Fiat 500E, a Chevy Spark EV, spend 5, 6K on one once the market cools down a little bit, and then live with it for a year, and you're going to be amazed at what 80 miles will actually do for your real-world use case.
Oh,
First of all, there's
I would look
yeah.
at a Model 3 right now if
Well,
if
Uncle Dave has got big
no,
bucks here.
no, but I'm just saying if I was not into the off-roading thing and all that, and I just needed a something fun to drive, I would look at a 3 or you know, even the Y or whatever. But the
It's
problem,
a big ask.
like for Tesla, it's a quality issue more than anything. I don't want to pick my truck up at night, have it delivered to my front door, and in the morning you see all the paint runs all over it, or you know, something broke, or. But I do think that, and I did a video on this, I think that is the way of the future. I think dealerships are going to go away, and I think manufacturers want them to go away because they're a pain in their side. Now, but what they do need is a service. They need repair. And obviously, EV doesn't need as many repairs as, you know, a conventional vehicle either, other than batteries, which are it's expensive, but they're easy to replace.
So I know you like Nissan, but I have to say the Nissan Leaf had set the EV industry back so many years because of these stupid batteries they put in them. And you hear the horror stories of, oh my God, I bought a Leaf.
Yeah.
The battery died a year later, and now it's a $15,000-$20,000 repair bill. And that was true for a while. Now it's cheaper. But the point is, like, the Leaf was a disaster in terms of battery longevity. If you look at like what Tesla's doing though, Model S, Model X, there's some with 400,000 miles that are like 5% degradation.
Wow.
These crap EVs, compliance cars like Sparks 500Es, that have thermal managing, they probably had 85 miles when they were new. 10 years later, they're probably down to 80, 83. So it's not a big deal. But I think like I'm impressed that you said that because it's a big leap for a lot of ICE internal combustion engine folks to be like, I'm going to spend 35K on what is an unproven technology to me that I don't really understand. I just don't think realistic for most folks. But what is to spend 5K on this little dinky car. They're all over the country now. Just try commuting in it. I mean, the first day is going to be like, this is the worst decision of my life. You show up with 25% back at home, and then you quickly realize, oh, it's actually really easy to live with, and it costs 15 cents to $1 to fill up at night, and there's nothing to break. And then eventually you'll be like, all right, look, this might work for our family. Let's look at a Mach-E or 94.
Yeah.
Now, the world of off-roaders that we play in, I'm with you, dude. I think we're a long way out. And this like notion that all cars are going to be electric by 2030, I don't buy it.
Well, what was it? Canada a couple weeks ago come out. I think they're even more aggressive with their, and I'm like, EVs in cold weather don't really mix well. Oh, we lost Tommy.
Hey,
there you go. There's your voice.
Norway is at like 80% adoption. It's
Yeah.
huge. But that's just because of the way that their cities are set up and their culture, and the EV infrastructure exploded over there like overnight. Americans, it's going to take a lot to get people out of their Tahoes and their Expeditions. You know what I mean? And we're at 2% adoption. I think it's going to grow significantly quicker in the next 10 years, but
of course.
No one's coming to get your twin turbo Bronco.
I hope not. I haven't even got it yet.
You haven't even got it.
Ford might come for it if, or I might go for them. Hey, one final thing. I know I keep saying this. So cool. on my cover of this video, there was the Ford potential Bronco pickup. Somebody did a rendering of this thing. Ford's been caught red-handed with a couple of Gladiators, so the Gladiator. We'll start there. The Gladiator is ugly as can be in the Overland base trims with the tiny tires. It doesn't look right. But once you get 35s under them, that length starts to come in its own a little bit. And everybody was like, "Oh, the Gladiator was a disaster." It's not if you look at sales numbers this year. Like it just took people. It took people a little bit to adopt to it. But I have to say, mine is. It's great. It's like having a Wrangler. The doors come off, the tops come off. You can have fun that way. But guess what? I can go to Home Depot. I can actually put, I mean, granted, it's not a full-size truck, but I can, my daughter's softball bags, whatever I throw in the back, I don't worry about the
Yeah.
dirt. Ford
Oh,
would be
yeah.
dumb to not want a piece of that. Plus, I think if Ford were to do that, the Ranger goes away.
That's an interesting. That's a really good point, Dave. So I think Jeep's issue, and this is what a lot of people I think are still stuck on, is when they launched the Gladiator. For years and years and years, people said, "I want a Wrangler with a bed,"
Mm-hmm.
and Jeep's answer was, "We're not going to market it as a Wrangler with a bed. We're going to market it as a proper like man's truck, right?
Yeah.
It's going to tow, it's going to haul, it's going to be great for the construction worker, maybe not that far, but they
Right,
really
right.
marketed it as being more than just a Jeep. They wanted it to be seen as a truck. And I don't think it is that, right? It's at the end of the day a Wrangler with a bed,
Yeah.
which is exactly what everybody wanted. And it's
Mhm.
great at that, right? Like I see the same things that you see, Dave, where like people are like, "Oh, I'm not gonna buy a Gladiator, it's too long." It's got
My
the
wife was adamant we're not buying a Gladiator. And
I didn't
now
like it very
it's her
much
probably
either.
favorite thing we have.
Yeah, I didn't like it much to begin with, actually. But then I'm like, okay, well, forget the fact that it can tow 7,500, which it kind of sort of can,
Yeah,
at least at
sorta.
altitude. Just like embrace the fact that it's a Jeep that has a big ass trunk, right? And if you do that, it's fantastic.
Mhm.
And I think people really are starting to fall in love with them. And you gotta, like you said, dude, you gotta put 35s on them, or they look a little silly in the Sahara. The wheelies, I think, looks brilliant with the blacked out wheels and like the knobby tires. I really don't
Except
think
for
you can do that.
mine came with Firestones with the white walls out. Or
You
the
don't like
white
the white walls.
Well, so they blacked out everything about the vehicle, the badging and everything. And at launch, they were doing BF Goodrich KM2s with the black walls. They switched for some reason to Firestone, which I'm not a Firestone guy, but I've been very impressed with these tires.
They're okay.
Except the white lettering just looks so out of place to me. And I
Oh, no,
couldn't
dude.
get mine to my local discount tire fast enough to get that flipped because it just looked horrible. But I'm ordering 35s for it. The only concern I have is the gearing of it.
Yeah.
But
Well, you heard it here, folks. Dave is smart about so many things, but he's wrong about white letters out because that thing is. I love my white letters out.
hey, if I have a
Yeah.
Mustang or something, a classic car, yes, I want it that way, man. But I don't know. It's not even an advertising thing. Like, I don't care about, oh, I'm advertising for them. No, I don't. It's not even that. It's just, I think the wheels with the blacked out wheel package and everything, it just looks great to me. But it is what it is. But I really do think that with Ford, if they were to do that, Ranger is a weird thing for Ford because you get one motor option.
Okay.
The trimmer package is a little for what you pay for it. It's in a weird segment for Ford because I know they're like, oh, it's not really stealing sales away from F-150, but it is. I mean, I guarantee you Toyota would love for Tundra to steal any kind of sales from Tacoma, so it would justify that vehicle a little bit more. But Ford is wanting to create a brand with Bronco. I think a Bronco, they did them in the first generation. You could get, it really wasn't a truck, but you could get a bed
The
on
half
thing.
caps. Yeah.
I really think that because midsize is strange, it can't grow any larger or else they're full-size trucks. The Ranger already, to get in the back, I'm 5'8", man. For me to get in the back of that truck is a nightmare. Like, they sit too tall. But you let me get a Bronco version of that, I'm going to put 35s or 40s on that thing, and then I can justify in my head, oh, well, it's a big toy.
So my question to you is, Bronco Sports, like it or not, is selling like hell, right?
Oh, sure.
That new little pickup truck called the Maverick that they've come out with is on the same platform. It's the same architecture. So why do you think that Ford decided to build that as its own separate brand when they could have just taken a Bronco Sport, given it a bed, and called it the Bronco Sport half cab or something?
I think
What's your opinion there?
they're definitely going down the path of we're doing something.
Okay.
And they need more. They got rid of all their cars. They need something else. They've got too many plants that need to build things. So at some point they have to put people to work. So they definitely. I don't think
I think that
I don't
they
think
should've just
Michigan
made
can
that-
build it, but
Yeah, go for it.
I
They
don't-
should have just made
oh,
that
go ahead,
thing
go
they should have just made that thing a Bronco Sport pickup. I think that's what they should have
Oh.
marketed as.
definitely. I think using the Maverick name, even though most people don't know the heritage of that being a car, I get it. Like I said earlier, a name's worth $1 billion. There's built-in marketing with that. Even though it's 30 years ago, there's still somewhat brand recognition with Ford Maverick, especially if you're Australian. They love that name down there. Um, but Ranger is a weird thing to me because I don't. I know they're selling almost 100,000. I think is what
Yeah,
they'll end up
a lot of
selling,
them.
which is nothing to balk at, but it has to be taking away from F-150 a little bit, right?
So, uh, yeah, it's I can't express to you. Um, I think that Ranger was a very affordable thing for them
Yes.
to bring into the, and ooh, we got some serious pushback from Ford when we said that it's very similar to the European and the Australian Rangers.
Hmm.
And they will say, well, no, that is wrong. It's got a different engine. It's got chrome bumpers. And I'm like, I don't know. Have you seen the inside of a German Ranger? And have you seen the inside of an American one? And have you seen the body? Like, it's pretty similar.
Yeah.
So I think that it was a relatively affordable thing for them to bring over. I think that they make a lot of money on everyone they sell. I think it's a very profitable vehicle.
Hmm.
And I think that they probably will actually keep it around because I think that they're going to target that a different group than a like a Gladiator style Bronco pickup truck.
Right.
Like the Gladiator's great, but I'm not really sure the Gladiator takes that many sales away from someone who was looking at like a Frontier. Like it's
Oh
just
no.
a very
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
price brand, and I think that Ford wants to be. I mean, they're a pickup truck brand. They want to have their fingers in every pot of the pickup truck world,
Right.
and I think it makes a lot of sense for them to keep that around. Now, I do think you're right on, dude. I think they're going to build a Bronco truck, eventually, right?
Mhm.
It's just like it makes sense, and I think that's going to be a very expensive, kind of more lifestyle-oriented vehicle than what the Ranger is, because you can still get the Ranger with steel wheels and like um, the full work truck spec, and you never really could go to Gladiator
Oh
with
yeah.
like the
Yeah.
full work truck.
I don't know anybody on a construction site pulling in Gladiators wanting to do anything.
Right, but it's an interesting point. We'll have to wait and see. Quite honestly, I have just as much input as you do on what's going on at that company, and it's like I wish I could tell you more of what's going on, and I just can't. I think that's the branding thing is an interesting question because they got a lot of pushback from Mach E buyers. The Mustang
Hmm.
Mach E, the
Hmm.
electric thing, with people saying it's not a Mustang. And then it seems like people didn't care, and now it really seems like people care again. So I don't know, dude. It's an interesting thing. I mean,
Yeah.
you're right. These brands are very valuable.
Oh, I'm with you. If they would have just called it a Mach E, but I think at some point they pull the Mustang name back. I think eventually it just does become a Mach E, and they just needed something for sport car guy to go, oh, okay, it's a Mustang. People are simple. They just buy into trends, and eventually, of course, I can see a point where Mustang goes away at one point too. So
I think, Dave, they should have done your guitar model, and they should have done it with the Mustang, and they should have done it with the Bronco, where they come screaming out of the gates with an electric two-door Mustang with 1,000 horsepower that does 0 to 60 in 1 second and costs $140,000, and that gets people into the showroom. And then you're like, well, you're not going to buy this, but how about a Mach E?
yeah.
Right? You get the same soul.
Oh yeah.
They should have done that with the Bronco, and they kind of tried to, but I'm not sure it's playing out where they say, bam, 3 locking diffs, turn assist, 35s. Oh, you don't really want this? It doesn't fit in your garage? Have a Bronco Sport. And I think that's a much smarter way of doing things than coming out with the one that people are probably going to buy and then have the enthusiast one later, because you're just upsetting the enthusiasts and you're not getting the non-enthusiasts in the door with the flashy headlines.
Well,
If that makes sense.
so guys, I only have 83 likes right now, and I've had well over to 300 people watching tonight. So if you guys would smash like, it just literally helps me find a new audience. So I appreciate if you do that. So obviously you've got a video coming up. You guys did an excellent job of teasing a Land or that Range Rover, Land Rover, whatever it was, like on 35s. Like the end of that video was brilliant. You guys have taken the Bronco up some nastier stuff. It looks like some more fun stuff.
Yeah.
When does that video drop?
Yeah, so we had the video where I blew the tires on the Defender, and then that made a lot of Land Rover people really upset. So I did the recovery video, and that made them even more upset. So the solution is we reached out to, I've got this buddy who's just the craziest guy. He built a Defender on 35s, which for Bronco Wrangler guys is like, oh, he put a bigger tire on it. But to put a Defender on 35s, you literally have to drop both subframes. You got to move, like you're moving intercoolers and radiators, and it was an absurd deal. And he said, hey, let's go do this. It's actually a pretty hard trail called Wheeler Lake. So we're going to do that on Wednesday. That video will drop. And then I will give you the spoilers. Like, it didn't roll down the hill, but it was inches away. I mean, it was to the point where if he had gotten out of the vehicle to attach the winch line to, it would have rolled over. He was like the only thing keeping this thing up. You know, the Defender is an interesting, very interesting vehicle, and I certainly have had some negative things to say about it. For what it is, it's very good. If you are looking for a vehicle to travel insane distances, off-road,
Oh, we lost your volume again, Tommy.
Utmost comfort. If you want to be really comfortable, get a Defender. Like, you're not going to beat it.
And they're not a bad price point either, really, for what you get.
I mean, I just keep forgetting we paid $60,000 for a Ford Bronco. Like, that'll get you a hell of a Defender.
Yes.
Right? And it'll tow 8,000 pounds, right? And it'll have 400 horsepower. And it'll have four-wheel drive and air suspension. And there's pros and cons to all that.
Sure. But in 40,000 miles, all that breaks, and then it's like my BMW. I've got a 5 Series, a 2012 5 Series that's a nightmare to keep on the road right now. But I told my wife, I said, the next BMW you want, we're going to lease a new one. It's covered that way. You get 3 fun years out of it. And guess what? When it starts leaking oil and everything else they do, it's somebody else's problem.
Yeah, it's if you are looking to get into the Land Rover world, and that's a very small percentage of folks watching this video, but there's one car and one car only that you should buy. And that is the Land Rover LR3, which is known as a Discovery in other parts of the world, from 2006 through 2009. And it's like a big joke, like, oh, my Range Rover, spends most of its time off-road because it's in the dealer. But the 06 through 09 LR3s, they're pretty much bomb-proof. It was when Ford came in and said, all right, we're gonna do this now.
Yeah.
It's got air suspension. Ours had 150,000 miles on its original air suspension. The V8s will typically last 250K. Transmissions are pretty good. Like, they're very well-made vehicles. And I love the Bronco. I love the Wrangler. But if you want to be comfortable off-road for $6,000, the LR3 is like nothing else. And it's very capable if you push it. More capable than the new stuff, I think.
Right. Well, Ford did that company a great service by kind of straightening up all their problems when they had a share of that between them and Jaguar. And
yeah, I honestly, though, dude, I think like when you talk about iconic nameplates, Wrangler, Defender, Bronco, those are it. You only have one chance to get it right. Land Rover, I have to say, is selling a ton of them. There's a huge wait list. But for the enthusiasts, they've kind of missed the mark. I mean, they build so many big, comfortable, relatively capable, expensive SUVs, like the Range Rover Sport and the Discovery Sport and the full-size Range Rover. And then they came out with the Defender, which everyone thought would be the convertible, fun haver. And it was another big, comfortable, luxurious SUV with some cool look to it, right? So I think that was a missed opportunity. But honestly, I've been following some of the forums and some of your comments, and there's folks like cross-shopping them with the Bronco.
Really?
And I asked Ford that. And I said, hey, did you consider this? And they kind of like laughed at me, and I'm like, yeah, but it's happening. Yeah. Like, there's a lot of folks that don't need the big-ass tires and the locking diffs, but want to look cool and kind of do easy trails.
And I know one that needed bigger tires, and I'm pretty sure it's in your driveway there.
Yes. That $652 later, it's back on its tires.
That was,
but like they do stuff like if you get a 6-cylinder, you want the 6-cylinder. You do not want a 4-cylinder with a vehicle the size of
that
a
one.
car.
Oh my God, that one you guys got. Who would have ever thought it would have turned into? I mean, as a reviewer buying cars, you kind of hope you have a problem. It gives you, because anybody can drive these things, get driving impressions, this and that. And it was part of the appeal to me. And Bronco was like, okay, maybe if I get one early, I can. It's content. And we're in the name of the game of content. But who would have thought that you would have had so many problems with that thing?
That was something else. And it's like, yeah, I've got like a lot of people that say like, oh, Land Rover paid you guys. I'm like, oh, I promise you they were not over the moon about that situation. And they handled it with the utmost British respect. And they did a great job handling it. But it was Dude, it was a bad situation. I mean, it was on Joe Rogan at one point. I was like,
oh yeah. I was like, because I listened to Rogan, and I was like, oh, they're talking about TFL in there for a minute, which is like, what an ultimate compliment for your channel of like
No.
like one of the biggest guys in video and podcasting is like, it's clearly he's watching your show.
person should ever get any publicity. Like this face just should be like under the table. If I had a good voice for radio, which I don't, then I would do that. But
hey
yeah,
man,
that was
people clearly like what you do, man, and all four of you have such different styles, and I think you all four have completely different audiences, which is what makes the channel fun.
Yeah.
And
I mean, you're in a unique situation though, Dave, where like you represent your channel, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all terrain's opinion is what Dave thinks, and that's a very cool thing. And it's like a lot of people shy away from that, but like just embrace that. I think that's cool. Our difficulty is like we'll see comments on other videos on our forums and be like, oh well, TFL hates this vehicle, and then I'll be like, well, Nathan doesn't like this vehicle. But that's his deal, right?
Right.
Where Andre likes that vehicle, and my dad and I bicker constantly, and we shouldn't.
I do enjoy that. I have to say, I enjoy it because you guys act like I do with my dad. I will do something, and my dad. Now, blessed, my dad's 80 some years old, but we'll just go back and forth, and it does remind me of me and my dad's interactions of like, and I'm glad you show that a little bit personality wise.
Yeah, we show it too much, but that's genuinely like we do not argue about like real stuff that matters, like finances and family stuff.
Yeah.
Like we will spend an hour at home arguing on whether or not the Big Ben trim of the Bronco should exist. And it'll be like a heated actual argument about like the silliest thing. And my mom will be like, can you just please like just shut up? I don't care.
Has your mom ever been on the channel?
Yeah, she was on one video with the Pacifica. We're very fortunate that we were able to do this because, like there's potential to make money, but it's such a small potential at the beginning.
Yeah.
So the only reason my family and my dad and I were able to do this is because she was the breadwinner for years and years and years and years.
Right.
And now finally, like my dad and I are making a livable wage. But for a lot of the time, it was like, oh, we made $9 this month.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we just put up 25 videos.
Oh yeah, because my ad revenue just popped. I have an idea at the end of the month, and I'm like, okay, I have an idea of now what I can do for videos for the next month. And I think, like you were saying early on, people think like all these rich YouTubers, you get 4 and 5 million, like the Stradman or all these guys, like they're buying cars like crazy, this and that. Well, they have to, or else you're not paying attention to those guys. This is a hard industry. I work 45 hours during the week, and then guess what? I come home. I have to watch a few videos like your channels and some of the other channels just to see what everybody's talking about. But then I spend another 25 hours or more cranking out, trying to find content. And when you're independent like I am, and you guys are, of course, you guys have more of a pot to choose from as for cars, but I can tell you, I was talking to a coworker about this today. It's a struggle. Like, I don't know what I'm doing the rest of the week. I need a video out by Thursday. I'm sitting here going, I guess, because usually when you see this, if you're watching my channel, usually that's when I go and buy something on Amazon, like the wash kit or something silly. Just, it's not going to do anything, but I just you have to get videos out, and this is a hard job, and I only do it part-time, so.
I've got a lot of respect for folks like you, folks like your buddy Tim Esterdahl, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who Truck Is Talk. When we started this in 2010, it was like us. Do you remember Sob Kyle? 04. There was this channel called Sob Kyle 04 who was the biggest automotive YouTube channel. He was like the 800-pound elephant in the room, and it was a much smaller community. And of course, we've did some just horrible videos over the years, and I still do videos that I'm like, oh, that was not great. But I mean, you just gotta like, it's just so much pushing, and it's always changing. And it's interesting to think that like we're 10 years old now, which is old by YouTube standards. And there's like channels that blew up and then blur, right? And it's a hard thing because YouTube can decide one day like, you're done.
Oh, well, during COVID, had I mentioned COVID early on of this video, I guarantee you it would have been flagged. They would have hit it, made sure it didn't get anything, and still they're a little sensitive to that. But yeah, when you piss off YouTube, you know, and that's why like the websites are important, because there's unfortunately you have to monetize the websites, and then you need to get on everything else, and you've got to it's just work after work after work. And you could have, I know you guys have a pretty good staff, but you could have 30, 40 people trying to do this and
Yeah.
still not do everything you need to do.
Oh no, I mean, like, love or hate him, like my dad, he works like, oh my god, he's just always working. It's 7 days a week. He's up at 5 answering emails, and he works till 6 p.m. And it's like it's a struggle to get him out of the house on the weekend to go to lunch. So he works really hard, and the team does too. And it's like I was saying, man, most of the videos we do are probably losing money, right?
Yeah.
And it's just you put it up, you see if it sticks, and it would be nice to have that ability to like know that okay, YouTube's gonna push this video, and sometimes like I'm sure your Bronco stuff does significantly.
Oh,
better
out
than
of anything I do, yes, definitely. If I talk about Jeep right now, it's not going to, I don't have an audience for Jeep right now. So yeah, my Jeep videos, if I got 500 views, I'm like, oh wow, well that didn't make the Jeep payment, I can tell you that.
Yep.
Uh,
Yeah, it's an interesting world, but it's very fun and it's exciting to be part of it. And I'm just gonna ride that wave as long as it lasts. So
Well,
it's pretty cool.
I like your setup over there. One of these days I'm going to be in Denver, and I'm definitely going to try to stop by and see the office
Definitely.
there, because
Yeah.
it looks like it looks like just a fun man cave. From what I've seen of it, you guys have toys everywhere, it seems like.
We have a
Um,
vending machine, not to brag. Yeah, we've got a vending machine. It's a pretty big deal.
Hey man, my one goal is I'm addicted to Monster. Unfortunately, I have one goal in life, that I want a Monster. Why it's stupid. It's stupid, but that's my one benchmark of like, if I could just have a Monster refrigerator sitting there.
Oh, what a goal!
I know it's pathetic,
Oh,
but
you've made it. Yeah, no,
yeah,
that's
it's
a
the
deal.
dumbest thing, man. But I mean, you guys have a hell of an office there, and you didn't get it overnight, and you guys worked your asses off to do that, man. But Tommy, I appreciate you being on here tonight. I appreciate you shouting the channel out, by the way. I didn't do the super chat on your channel to anything. I just wanted to throw a couple dollars at you guys, but
No, I appreciate. I owe you $20 for the
no,
record.
no,
To
not
be
at
honest,
all.
Dave, I'm kind of I don't know how you'd put this, but you'd think my job I would be better at tech than I am, and I don't know how to give you a super chat right now.
I'm not
So I
worried
do
about it.
apologize, but I will buy you lunch next time I see you.
Well, cool. So, guys, I know you had questions, and I'd had so much fun just talking here. I completely ignored
Yeah.
your questions tonight, but thanks to everybody who's been a part of the show. Once again, smash the like button. All that does is just tell YouTube to send some people my way. So, whether it be 2-wheel drive, 4-wheel drive, you guys know the drill. It does not matter what you drive, because we've been